Good evening, everyone. Could we please rise for the prayer? Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for the direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. We salute the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a special meeting of the City Council to continue to conduct interviews for the city manager. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Belanger,
Here.
Mayor Elliott,
Here.
Councilor Kennedy,
Here.
Councilor Leahy,
Here.
Councilor Martin,
Here.
Councilor Mercia,
Here.
Councilor Milonazo,
Here.
Councilor Rourke,
Here.
Councilor Samaras.
Here.
9 present. I'll read the special meeting notice. Notice is hereby given as required by Rule 6 of the City of Lowell City Council rules that the Lowell City Council will hold a special meeting of the Lowell City Council in the City Council chambers on Thursday, March 27th at 6 p.m., the purpose of which is to meet as a committee of the whole in order to conduct interviews with 2 of the 6 finalists for the position of City Manager of Lowell, the first beginning at 6 p.m., followed by the second at or about 7:30 p.m. The public is invited to attend by order of Rodney M. Elliott, the mayor, Angela Gittier, acting city clerk. I'd just like to take one moment and ask for a moment of silence for 2 members of the Boston Police Department, Lieutenant Edward Walsh and firefighter Michael Kennedy, who passed away in the line of duty. If we could all please rise for a moment of silence and darken chambers. May they rest in peace. We'd like to now invite Mr. Balakonis, if you'd like to come into the well and have a seat at the table. Welcome to Lowell and welcome to the City Council chambers. On behalf of my colleagues, we want to thank you for expressing interest and joining us here tonight.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. If we could just ask you, there's a little button to turn that on and make sure the mic is somewhat close. Mr. Balakonis, we just, as I mentioned earlier, you're welcome to make it up to a 10-minute opening statement. Then we'll proceed with a 10-minute question and answer from each member of the City Council, followed by a closing statement. So with that, we can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, council members, thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to come to you this evening to tell you a bit about me and my interest in the city manager's position. As you know from my resume, my name is Greg Balakonis. I'm a lifelong resident of Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, where I live. I have one daughter who is a sophomore in college, who's away in Connecticut, and I am in the career and business of city management, local government. I've spent my whole career working in local government. I'm not a politician. I'm not from the private sector. I'm not in academia. I'm in local government. That's the expertise that I bring to this position, is the ability to perform the essential functions of being a city manager as it relates to finance, personnel, human resources, allocation, and management decisions. That's my strength. But I'm also wise enough to realize that city managers in the 21st century need to do more than sit behind their desk and tell people what to do on the job. I think you'll find, and hopefully you'll find from my interview today, that I can bring to the position the ability to reach out to the various constituencies that are in this community, the stakeholders that are in this community. That's part of the leadership package that I believe I can offer you in the position of city manager, in addition to the technical issues and the technical side of doing the job. For the past 8.5 years, I've been the town administrator in North Reading, Massachusetts, and I think as I joked with a couple of council members, I've driven through your community on a daily basis, on 495, stuck in traffic usually. But I know the area. I know that this city has had a commitment and a support of excellence in its town city manager position. I know it's had a long history of excellence with regard to its city manager form of government and the Plan E form of government that you have. So in my position in North Reading, I'm the Chief Administrative Officer. Many of the duties are similar to the duties and responsibilities here. However, the scale is significantly smaller. The town of North Reading, the annual appropriation is about $63 million. That's a drop in the bucket compared to your community. However, many of the job duties and responsibilities that I have in North Reading, such as assembling a strong leadership and management team, making sure that we hire competent, dedicated, and intelligent employees, that submission of the budget that's balanced to the dollar and takes into account all available revenues, a budget that shows cost effectiveness, transparency, and efficiency. Those duties are identical to what you desire in a town and a city manager. So in my present position, I feel as though I've demonstrated the ability to put together a very well-run operation. The community is a demanding community in the sense that it's a fairly affluent population that does live there. And the demanding population means that you need to deliver excellence. And so I would also say that one of the things that I would take into consideration in looking in this position is delivering excellence, because that's what the taxpayers demand, and that's what you demand as the people that I would answer to. So I would pledge in coming to this position that I would deliver excellence. In my 30 years in the field, I've worked, in addition to North Reading, I've worked in Medway, and I've worked in Norfolk. And that's over the last 21 years that I've worked in those 3 jobs. So that will give you a little bit of an idea in terms of where I've been over the last 20 years. Prior to that, I worked in some smaller communities or communities in positions by different titles, all of them involved in local government. I learned early in my career through trial and error. I made mistakes, I learned my lessons, and I vowed that I wouldn't make those mistakes again. However, in this business, that's always a difficult challenge. What I can pledge to you in coming here today is that I'll do my best. I'll deliver passion and excellence to the job, a commitment to approach this position with innovation, creativity, and a willingness to listen. One of the things that I feel has been important in terms of my tenure in North Reading and my other prior jobs is you have to be available and you have to listen to other people. You have to listen to their ideas because you're not always the smartest person in the room. So I would pledge that I would be available to the members of the council, I'd be available to the members of the community, and the many different constituencies that represent your city. And I know that they are a number and they are diverse. And frankly, I find that as a challenge and one of the things that draws me to this position at this stage in my career. So that's a little bit of an idea of who I am as a person, and an idea of what my philosophy is in terms of my approach to the position. I'm quite familiar with Massachusetts. I know Massachusetts labor law, health insurance laws, and all of the rules and regulations that make our state truly unique. I find that as a manager, it's best to seek cooperation and collaboration wherever you possibly can. It's important to get people to become participants in the decision-making process. None of this gets done by being an authoritarian sitting in the back office telling people what to do. So that's kind of the idea in terms of how I approach the issues and how I approach government. I'm excited and engaged to be here. I welcome the opportunity to respond to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valukonis. We're going to begin the questions with City Council, Council Belanger, and then we're going to go alphabetical till we conclude with Mrs. Samaras. So, Council Belanger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Valukonis, welcome to Lowell.
Thank you, sir.
But if you don't mind, I'm going to call you Greg. We've been rather informal in this process, and I hope you don't mind.
I think that's great.
Thank you very much. Well, welcome to Lowell. Please educate the council and the viewers at home, Greg, to tell us about the annual budget in North Reading and the population, if you don't mind.
Sure. The town of North Reading, the population is approximately 16,000 people. The annual operating budget for the current fiscal year is about $56 million. And for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2014, the budget would be approximately $59 million.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now, Greg, I have your resume here, and I can see that you most certainly are a career manager, if you will. I am impressed that you have longevity in your respective towns that you served. You have served 8 years in the town of Norfolk as town administrator. You served 5 years in the town of Medway as town administrator. And currently, you are town administrator in Reading for nearly 10 years. That's rather impressive. 10 years in Lowell is an eternity. I don't know if you're aware of that, but very impressive nonetheless. But to elaborate real quickly, I want to give you a chance. There was, in the local newspaper over the weekend, Greg, there was some research that your most recent review in North Reading was not very favorable in many different areas. I understand in 10 years in the same town, you may not be the most liked guy, and I understand you have to make difficult decisions, and I understand that. So for you to explain yourself to the council and to residents, who I'm sure a lot of the residents of Lowell saw this as well. So how do you explain this poor review? Because 20 years as town administrator, and you don't all of a sudden, and this is coming from your quote, how to do your job. So please explain this poor recent review, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I actually welcome that opportunity because sometimes the review gets published and comments get published, and it really presents one side of the story. Over a period of time, the elected membership has changed, and a lot of what you do is you have to have the support of your elected officials and your elected board. And the magic is not there anymore. The connection is not there anymore with the elected officials. The individuals that are there are all fine people, but they have different philosophies in terms of how they want their community run and how they want their manager to perform. My most recent review was not that good. But what I've said in the past is that you need to take that in the context of the other 8 reviews that I've had since I began that position in 2005. All of those previous reviews were rated as commendable, and I think if you look at the average of those reviews over a period of many years, you'll find that my performance has been very good. I feel as though I have strong community support, that the community supports me, that the department heads and the staff support me, and I've worked very well with my department heads and staff over a period of time, and I feel at no time have I lost their support in performing any function and responsibility associated with my duties. And I would encourage you that if you have any questions about that, feel free to contact my staff. I would welcome you to contact people, not on my reference list, but to go offline and talk to people who maybe work for the town or people who may be residents of the town that you may know or may not know. I think my reputation and my ability to do the job speaks for itself, notwithstanding the most critical comments that came in on the performance review. And like I said, I don't want to get into a he said, she said type of argument with the members of my board because, again, I'm respectful of the job that they have to do. But I can tell you that I haven't forgotten how to do the position, that I feel as though the position identifies that the town administrator there is responsible for the day-to-day management of the town, and I continue to perform and execute those duties to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Greg. And I asked you that question by no means to back you in a quarter. It was more or less for clarification, so you could better describe to the residents, all the residents of Lowell. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now, Greg, reading your resume, I don't see much as far as economic development in your resume. And sure, I mean, I don't know if I'm missing a page here or whatnot, but surely your time in government, you've survived 3 different towns for many years. Please describe some of your achievements as far as economic development, because here in Lowell, the new manager is going to be hiring a planning and development director. He or she will have that opportunity to do so. So what do you envision? What have you accomplished in these respective towns? And what do you envision here in Lowell regarding economic development, if you don't mind?
I know that it's a priority of your community. Certainly looking at your tax rate structure and the accomplishments of your past administration, I know that economic vitality is critically important to your community. It's also important to a community like North Reading. However, North Reading has some issues related to infrastructure that really needed to be addressed before the town can implement an economic development plan. And that's in the area of sewer, which is absent, and water, which we purchase about $1.2 million a year from the town of Andover. So the town, in terms of its economic, the ability to develop economically is somewhat limited by the fact that it doesn't necessarily have the infrastructure in place. And I only raise that as an issue because of the fact that until those are in place, you're really hampered in terms of economic development. And that's where I've spent a lot of my time is working on those issues. That being said, the town does enjoy a good relationship with the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. We've worked with their field representative in the area to encourage and foster economic growth. We have parcels in the community which have been designated for priority for development. One of those parcels was developed for affordable housing because the town was under its 10% mandated amount under Chapter 40B. And so we went ahead and there was some housing that was built there. But the town's position on economic development is to work with the Mass Office of Business Development, with the local Chamber of Commerce in terms of promoting economic growth within the community. The town does have a major employer. It's known as Teradyne Corporation. There's also another business in the community called Kiva Systems, which is affiliated with Amazon. They make the robotics that are involved in that particular area. So the town has encouraged and provided assistance to those communities. In some of my earlier communities, I had some experience with grant writing. Some of the communities that I worked in did not have a significant amount of financial resources for expansion of infrastructure, sewer, water, roadways. We had an opportunity to work with, through grant writing, to provide additional assistance in those particular areas.
Okay, what would you say is your tenure in North Reading now, I'm talking, what would you say is your greatest achievement regarding economic development? What have you and your administration brought to your town, respectively, in your tenure?
We have, specifically as it relates to the town, we have identified expedited permitting on some parcels in town that we have available for economic development, that we've passed regulations through our zoning bylaws that would promote development of these properties. But for the lack of sewer and water in those areas, the permits are ready to go. We meet regularly with the Chamber of Commerce officials and, as I said, Mass Office of Business Development. And again, one of the constraints that we face is sewer and water. So I would say, getting to your question, really the expedited permitting on parcels that could be developed for office industrial use. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts owns some property that they wish to sell, and that's the properties that we've identified as being priority development parcels in town.
Okay, thank you. Now, I see you recently hired a chief of police, is that correct? Under your tenure?
Yes.
Okay, what have you implemented for your town regarding public safety? What initiatives of your administration working with the chief, or what have you put in place for your respective town?
One of the challenges that we faced is not only we hired a police chief. In the short time that I've been there, I've hired 2 police chiefs. So there was a long-term chief that was there for a number of years, and he retired when he reached the mandatory age of 65. There was another chief that was a bridge, and he was there for several years until the current chief would have been hired. In terms of what initiatives we have, North Reading has a significant drug issue and a drug problem. And I'm not saying that in any secret. We have a community impact team, which is done through our police department, that really is trying to address the drug issue in the community. And we have dedicated resources in terms of numbers of officers to deal with the local drug issue. The other thing that we've also dealt with is the need for a full-time school resource officer in our schools to work with the children and the staff in terms of implementing and establishing public safety measures within the school district. So those are probably two of the things that we've done. Other initiatives that have been established in the police department is the department was relatively scarce in terms of senior officers, and by that, it was the chief and 2 lieutenants when I started that position. Over a period of time, we've expanded that so that it's the chief. He now has 4 lieutenants because there was, again, not significant command structure in place to provide proper supervision in the police department and accountability of the police officers and making sure that the patrols and the sergeants were doing their work on a daily basis. So now we have the command structure in place that provides that necessary support to the department members and validation to the community that their monies are being well spent.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. My time has expired. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Balakonis. I just I wanted to focus a little bit on a couple of things in your letter. You actually, in the beginning of your opening statement, you referenced transparency, and you believe in transparency. Could you provide a couple of examples of what you mean by that, and how you and your administration operates being transparent?
There's tremendous interest in labor agreements and labor contracts. And in the past, that's always been done in an area not really spoken about much in meetings, not much attention drawn to it. But when you look at the cost of labor and the cost to the community, there's a significant investment that the town has in its labor. So what we try to do is we make those documents available to the public. We have no problem talking about those items in a public meeting and providing those within a public forum so that the public has an opportunity to know all of the cost of running local government. Other areas of transparency that we've addressed is the budget development process. The budget is developed in a very public session. We have public hearings and public meetings where we run through all of our revenue assumptions. We run through all of our expense assumptions, and we spend significant time discussing in an open way relative to what the costs are of running government. We find that those are 2 particular areas that we've achieved greater transparency and credibility and trust with the public, and we work hard to open up new areas with the public in terms of promoting transparency from within the organization.
Very good, thank you. Thank you very much. So another area that you cite in your resume is negotiating contracts, and you cite concessions in healthcare. Can you describe what those concessions were? Or was it but moving to the GIC, or was it something else?
Kind of. We have seven labor contracts in North Reading. So it's a relatively small community, but there are 7 labor contracts on the municipal side. And I participate in those negotiations as the head negotiator. Depending upon the union, it may or may not involve counsel. We try to negotiate some of the smaller contracts without counsel to minimize the cost to the community. But with regard to concessions, the town was in a health insurance plan that was proving to be extremely costly. And by that I mean that the increases in the budget were almost to the point where they were using all of the available new revenue funds that the town identified on an annual basis. And those increases were upwards of $1 million a year. And those numbers sound small when you look at a community your size. We're able to go forward and not go with the GIC because we looked at other options in addition to that. And we decided that we would go forward with implementation of a new health insurance plan that has brought the increases down to a very manageable level. July 1, 2014 would represent the third year that we'll be going through a new health insurance plan. It's a plan that's offered through Harvard Pilgrim. It's a HMO plan. But we work very hard with our Employee Insurance Advisory Committee, with our unions, to make sure that the cost increases are modest. And we've had cost increases between 2.5% and 4% in the time since we've adopted this new health insurance program. As you know, going through the insurance adoption procedure and not going through the GIC, we went through the traditional negotiation process. We did not give back any concessions to our unions in terms of going to this new program, because the unions understood that one of the challenges was we could not provide money for either contract settlements or expansion of personnel if almost every single dollar was going toward the health insurance budget. So that's one of the areas that we developed some good strategy on.
Thank you. Another item, and at least in the city, we have significant costs associated with buyback sick leave, as well as, in some cases, unlimited sick leave that when individuals retire, the city has to pay out. On the city side, we've able to cap it at some point. Is that something you have in North Reading? Is that what you reference when you say end of year?
It's pretty much the same thing, that police officers and firefighters could buy back 100% of their sick leave when I began that position. Up to, on the police department side, it was 1,200 hours. And on the fire department side, I think it was probably around 800 to 850 hours. We've achieved success in lowering those totals. Slowly, we can't go obviously from 100% down to 50%, but we've achieved concessions of 25% end of career buybacks. I know that, for example, in the police department, we costed out the annual buybacks, and if everyone were to retire with the amount of sick leave that they had on their books, it would have cost the town $1 million. Not affordable by any circumstances, and also not acceptable to the political leadership that was in town, and decided that it was appropriate that we should go forward and seek concessions from our unions in that area. And the unions understood that it was not affordable either. So I know you didn't ask it, but what we did is we phased in that program so that any of the senior employees who wished to retire before the expiration of the contract enjoyed the right to retire under the previous language that existed. And that effective as of a certain date, the reduction was by 25%, and that new employees in police and fire would only be allowed to buy back 25% of their sick leave. So we've achieved those type of concessions with all of our employees, but it's most significant in police and fire.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. So each community, we all face different challenges, and I'm sure North Reading is no different than the other community in the city as well. What are some of the challenges you face in your community? Maybe you can just cite one or two, and how you manage to deal with them or bring a solution or resolution to those.
Prior to my arrival, the schools prepared their budget independent of the town. And frankly, the budget was prepared without an understanding of what the town's revenue situation was. What I did was we've achieved bringing together the school side and the town side early in the budget process, so that the schools have an opportunity to know what the revenues are. They have an opportunity to question those revenues and have a full understanding before they begin development of their budget process, that this is the dollars that we have available. Obviously, I'm overly simplifying that in terms of how we did that, but we do get together monthly. We meet monthly. We meet monthly to review revenues and expenses and risks associated with the existing budget. And that didn't happen by accident. The benefit of that is as a municipal administrator, I have an appreciation for the challenges that the schools have in funding their budget when they have a number of costs related to either out-of-district placements or special education. We, as municipal leaders, now have an understanding for what those are and how they drive the budget. On the other hand, the schools have an understanding of what the total revenue picture is, and we seek agreement prior to the budgets being adopted in terms of a budget that fits within the available revenues. So that's what we work toward. Some other things that we've faced challenges on and things that I've been pretty successful. When I began my career there, the population or the group of town employees and department heads was older. There's nothing wrong with that. They were senior and they were knowledgeable. But a number of those people reached retirement age during the time that I've been there. So one of the things that I've done is work very hard to establish a group of younger department heads who are intelligent and smart and know their business and know their jobs. And as a result of that, hiring those people, I feel that they're responsive to the needs of local government. How did we get there? On police and fire, we got there through going through the civil service process, which, as you probably know, is a significant challenge, and it's not always easily accomplished to find qualified people from within your departments, and then to identify the most qualified person and have them reach the rank of police chief and fire chief. But we were successful in doing so, and that creates a number of other openings then within the ranks that require a lot of effort to then find other qualified people to assume the positions that have been vacated. So over the period of time that I've been there, we've transitioned from an older staff to a younger staff who's technology savvy, who understands what it's like to have government in 2014. And I feel as though I've been part of that process. And frankly, it's one of the things that I'm most proud of is that type of transition to go from an older senior organization to a much younger organization and have people in place who can perform their jobs.
Okay, I'm probably close to being out of time, but could I just follow up on that question? What was that process that you put in place to go out and solicit and attract a newer workforce?
I think that probably the way that we would engage younger people is to have attractive pay and benefits, to have a community that allows department heads to perform their jobs within the parameters that have been established, to give them the opportunity to lead an organization and not be heavy-handed in terms of how they're going to run their operation. And the town has always been competitive in terms of its pay and benefits, and that's probably one of the things that we've found that's brought younger, talented people to the workforce.
Thank you, Mr. Beliconis. Next individual will be Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you. Hi, Greg. Thank you for
Hi.
applying.
Thank you.
I should say at the outset that when all the resumes came in, when I saw you, is I happened to know one of the selectmen in North Reading, and so I gave him a call. And he spoke very, very highly of you and of your long tenure there, and sort of verified what you said about, basically, he saw the reason that you were leaving as there was a major change in the board. And I suppose that happens to everybody in your business. I realize that you come from a smaller town than Lowell, but Lowell is somewhat unique in that we have a city manager government. And so anybody that comes before us looking for this job is probably going to come from a community that's a lot smaller than us. I think even the couple of city managers that we've had that have been mayors have been from cities that have been significantly smaller than Lowell. So I guess I think that in smaller communities, the components are the basic components at least are the same. It's just maybe a lot bigger and more complex here in Lowell. If you were selected to be the city manager here, would you consider coming here without a contract?
Interesting question, and one that I hadn't thought of before you raised it. As you know, the law provides that city managers and town administrators under the law may have an employment agreement. I've enjoyed that in the communities that I've worked in over the last 21 years. I feel as though it does provide myself personally with some level of security in terms of being able to perform the job and make the difficult decisions that you would have. So from my perspective, I would prefer that a contract be in place. I don't feel as though it creates any type of obstacle or challenge and nor should it create any type of animosity, but it's sometimes nice to have things defined and written out, and knowing that you're coming into a diverse city with many different constituencies, it's sometimes nice to have that contract behind you. So I would say that I certainly would appreciate consideration for a contract.
So is that a maybe? Would the
Yeah,
site
that's
have
a
to be
definite maybe.
Okay. Councilor Belanger asked you about economic development in North Reading. Prior to North Reading, you also had long tenures in 2 other communities. Are you able to cite any economic development initiative that you played a role in, and could you describe that for us and what your role was?
That's a good question. Earlier in my career, I was involved significantly in grant writing. And those were during the years that the state had a number of different grant programs that are out there and available to provide low-interest loans for commercial and businesses that were looking to expand, create jobs. And I was involved to some extent in writing grants that allowed those businesses to come into the communities at that time. But looking back at my tenure there, it's difficult for me to kind of pinpoint a particular business over the last 21 years that I can point to and say, I had a hand in bringing them into the community. That's a challenge, and I know that it's one of the things that you're looking for here, so I would acknowledge that I would need to come up to speed on that and work very diligently with the staff to make sure that that was a priority of mine.
Okay, and so have you given that any thought? And if you have, what would be your approach to bringing in economic development? Let me just say that during the last campaign last fall, many of the people on this city council campaigned on the issue of economic development. Sure. And I think that, I mean, you're only this far. By the time you get down to the end, you're going to get a lot more questions on economic development, I would imagine. And so what would your approach be? Or do you have any ideas or visions of how to bring more economic development into the city?
Yeah, I would say one of the areas that you want to look at as being a tremendous resource is to look at the expertise that the university may have, the knowledge that they have in terms of providing and assisting the town with economic development strategies and programs. Again, as I mentioned to you before, I think one of the key agencies that I would work with is the Mass Office of Business Development. I know that in North Reading, we work with the Regional Planning Association, the Regional Planning Authority down in Boston, to work on economic development strategies. And so how would I look at it, and what would I look at? Economic development is typically businesses who are here who are looking to expand from within. I would use the powers of the office to put together an economic development strategy that I think would be reasonable and would address what the community's needs are. I know that there is significant vacant commercial space as I drive throughout the city and I look at the downtown. So I'm aware of the fact that there is a lot of vacant commercial space. I also know that a lot of the development that's been done downtown is of residential character. And so those don't necessarily they create a population in your city center, but they don't necessarily create jobs. So I would want to look at what space might be available in working through the planning agencies to develop a strategy to bring in businesses into the area.
How about the town hall in North Reading? How would you describe the atmosphere there, the culture there? Is it, let me say, user-friendly, or, and if it is, then what did you do to foster that?
We have a great spirit in town hall. We all work collaboratively together. The morale is high. There's a relatively small staff that's there. So we're friendly to the public that comes in. I encourage an open door policy, and I frankly have one myself as the administrator. What I like to do is, I'm not a desk manager. I like to walk around and speak with employees, speak with department heads, speak with the public who may come into the building about issues that they feel are important. And I feel that it's important that the manager in this position maintain the same policy, that he needs to get out from behind his desk, go to the police department, become visible, the fire department, the DPW, the library, a number of the other different buildings that exist within the community and become known and became seen. You establish support for your employees, which fosters high morale. We've done that through training of our employees. We train our employees all the time on technology issues, on issues related to customer service, and more recently, we've done some training with employees related to security. And by security, dealing with the menacing customer, the person who's unhappy. How do you deal with that person? How do you deal with the person who may have mental health issues that comes into the building, the person that's agitated? And we've enlisted the help of our law enforcement and police department to assist us with that training. We've made physical improvements to the building that's done with the idea of promoting additional security. And all of that shows a concern and a compassion by management to support their employees. And so that's some of the things that we've done that have fostered increased morale. One of the things I like to do, and it's a little thing, is I don't like voicemail. So during the daytime, you don't use voicemail. You answer a live phone. When someone calls the town offices, they expect that they will receive someone who will pick up that phone and address what their concerns are. It seems small and it seems insignificant, but during the daytime, voicemail really is a no-no. Dealing with people who walk into the building who come in and are looking for a particular office, one of the things that I've trained my staff, instead of pointing the finger and saying it's the third door on the right, walk that person to the office that they wish to go to. Introduce that person to the person in that department who knows the answers. Frame what their question is so that they feel comfortable that you're interested in their problems and their issues. It's little items like that that the public truly appreciates, that they're not just being pushed off to the side. And I've encouraged all of my department and staff to do the exact same thing. So when we reach out to the public at least feels that they've been dealt with in a professional and a respectful way.
Thank you. That's an excellent answer to that question. In North Reading, I have time left, right? I think, 1 minute? Let me give you my 1 minute question. In North Reading, the Board of Selectmen meets once a week, I think?
They do.
Okay, and then do you meet with department heads the day after that? I mean, how does that go? Or how does that operation go there on a week-by-week basis?
Good question. I sit down with my immediate staff the morning after the meeting. I have a daily meeting with my immediate staff every single day to go over issues, to determine what's important, what's on their mind. I meet with my senior department heads, which is police, fire, DPW, and finance on a weekly basis to break down the tasks that come from the meeting. And another question is I meet with department heads every single month. So the last Wednesday of every month, we have a department head meeting. Everyone's there. Everyone has to be there. And that's regular and it's institutionalized in terms of what we do and how we do it.
All right, so you meet with department heads once a month?
Yes.
But then you meet with who the day after the selectmen's meeting?
I would meet with my staff, so that would be the finance director, myself, and I have two people in my office who are my assistants that I meet with on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Council. Next Council is Council Leahy.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for coming. One of my first questions is about the bond rating. So I see that, I think it said here, and you've increased yours up to a AA. So could you explain your understanding and how important that is to keep that bond rating and increase it here in the city of Lowell? And
Critical, because the bond rating translates directly to the interest rate that you receive, which then directly relates to the amount of money that taxpayers will be paying when you borrow for capital expenses. So just this past week, we happened to go through a bond rating review for a $15 million borrowing that we're doing related to our high school and middle school project. We spent significant time preparing for that. I would assemble a team going into that bond rating conference, which consists of people who are knowledgeable on both the town side and the school side that can speak to revenues, but also can speak to our expenses, what policies we have in place to show that we have strong management controls and effective financial management policies that are in place. And so we just recently went through that process. It was a telephone conference call. When we have a major project in the bond ratings review, we like to bring out the rating agencies to actually come out to the community, sit down in a meeting for a morning, and understand what makes North Reading tick. What are our strategies? What type of investments have we made? What are our financial positions? What is the status of our reserves? And one of the things that I've done in North Reading is we've built up our reserves considerably in the period of time that I've been there. The town had smaller reserves when I began the position there. And then again, stability in the town's financial offices and general management contributes to the bond rating also. So in looking at it, I can't emphasize enough that one of the key functions of an administrator or a manager is to maintain and do everything possible to support either maintenance or increasing the bond rating. And that is done by preparation. It's done by establishing policies with relation to reserves, with relation to capital expenditures, with relation to financial management in general, and having those policies be instituted and followed religiously, because the bond rating agencies will not take your word when you say we have those policies in place. They'll want to see evidence that they're in place, and they'll look at your finances and make assumptions based upon those numbers, whether those practices have been implemented and whether, in fact, they're working. So it's critical. To get back to your question, I apologize for the long rambling answer, but it's near and dear to my heart having gone through one on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, here in Lowell, the next city manager is going to have to hire a next CFO. So could you explain your approach to hiring for this critical position and what you might be looking at and how you might go about it?
The finance director, it was a finance director in North Reading, left at one point in my tenure. There was an egregious mistake that was made on the budget. It was not a mistake that could be tolerated, and that person's services were terminated. Whether you know that or not, sometimes you have to do that because there's an egregious mistake that's made with regard to the budget. So the town did solicit applicants for a director of finance position. We were looking for someone who was technically savvy because we were undergoing a transition of our financial accounting software package from I call it a mom and pop software program to a state-of-the-art financial software package, and we needed someone who would be technology savvy in terms of understanding that. We were looking for a finance director who not only could perform all of the accounting functions, and people lose track of the fact that in addition to being the finance director, you're also performing the statutory duties of town accountant, which is preparation of the recap sheet, the balance sheet, the Schedule A, all of those things that fly under the waterline that you don't really think about until there's a problem with them and DOR says, we can't set your tax rate because there's numbers in your tax rate recap that don't look right. So finding someone who has the skill level to work their way through all of those numbers that translate to the balance sheet, the Schedule A, and the recap sheet is critically important. And we wanted to find someone who had accounting skills and could perform those accounting skills. Other skills that I wanted to identify is someone that could analyze trends with regard to revenues and expenditures, someone that had a sophisticated knowledge of financial operations in other communities, and policies, the ability to establish financial policies that could govern how the town spends money. So those are the things that I looked at in a finance director, and also someone who's part of the town's management team, someone that's not afraid to stand up and take a position that may be contrary to myself or the board, who has an understanding of all of the revenue and expense operations side of the town, and probably is one of the more critical positions that we have in the community. And I'm happy to report we were successful in finding the right person for the job. And I think at one time she was a candidate for your auditor's position here, but then she withdrew. Yeah. But I'm glad that she withdrew because she's a good candidate down there.
Thank you. On your resume, I see that you listed one of your bullet points here. You developed and implemented a program to bring fire department from basic to advanced life support, and you added staffing at no cost to the taxpayers. Could you explain that a little bit?
Sure.
what the program was and how you,
Yeah, starting when I began the position back in 2005, the town had a study done. The study identified deficiencies in the fire department, and one of the deficiencies that was identified was inadequate staff on the shifts. And there was never enough money to provide additional staffing in the fire department. And the town had offered basic life support for a number of years, and there was a private ambulance company that provided advanced life support. The town received no revenues from that. Matter of fact, the town was in a position where it was a cost to the town to provide that. The board established that one of their priorities, the strategic priority, was to provide advanced life support. And we did that in two ways. We first negotiated through our collective bargaining agreement that existing firefighters could become paramedics, and they were compensated for that. They received stipends, and they received training to be able to accomplish that. And I'm pleased to report that 4 firefighters took up on that opportunity and participated to become paramedics, and the town supported that. We also went out to the state through the civil service list and hired new firefighter paramedic candidates who already had their paramedic licenses to come on board and fulfill the position. So we accomplished a goal of advanced life support being implemented, but we also had the opportunity to accomplish the goal by increasing the staffing in the department that otherwise couldn't be addressed without the accompanying revenues that were coming in. The town brings in, on ALS revenues alone, a little bit under $700,000 a year. And again, the numbers seem small when you look at a community the size of Lowell, but in a town like North Reading, $670,000 to $700,000 a year in ALS revenues can provide the necessary funding to bring in and pay for staffing in their entirety, but it also can pay for the cost of a new ambulance down the road if we judiciously spend that money and we bank it, which is what we are doing, so that we're also funding a capital cost through those fees that otherwise would have been something that would have been paid for by the taxpayers.
very good, thank you. Time for one more? About a minute, okay. So I've asked this question to everybody so far. If you were hired as the city manager, what would your first day, what would your first week on the job look like?
Meeting people and listening, asking them what they like about the city, what they don't like about the city, and if they had their way, what would they do differently? And beginning to develop some threads and some commonalities of what I hear back on those answers. And I would ask those questions of residents who came to see me, employees, department heads, council members. That's how I'd spend my first day, my first week, and my first month of really listening and determining what those issues and threads are that I would hear.
Thank you very much.
Council Martin?
Thank you, and I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, so I apologize if my voice is a little
me too.
coarse.
Me
So,
too.
well, you're doing better than I am, it looks like, so.
For now.
In any event, I wanted to return to the discussion about the CFO. You spoke about the person that applied here for the auditor, and I agree, she was a very attractive candidate. Sorry to see that she withdrew. But you recruited her to that position,
I did,
and from, I believe, Somerville?
Somerville.
Okay,
And she was in a relatively low position in Somerville,
right,
so I took a chance.
and it worked out.
It did.
So, did you say the CFO performs the duties of the town accountant?
Yes.
So did you have a separate, or there was no separate town accountant, or you just gave these enhanced duties and called it a
No,
CFO?
the charter in North Reading provides that the person wears two hats, as the finance director and the town accountant.
Okay, and, because we don't have the combination, we have the independent auditor who the council hires, who I think sort of fills the role of, similar to the town accountant. And then we historically have had a CFO who is, I don't know, maybe more like a budget director, but much more than that, because the CFO, if the person's doing the job right, is getting into the policy decisions that underlie the budget figures and not just the budget itself. So, So it's good to see you recognize the importance of that. I was just trying to understand how it worked where you are.
Seen your budget document. It's an impressive document to read through,
Okay.
all 348 pages.
All right, we have an abridged version for the upcoming fiscal year, at least for now. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to see that.
I have not seen that one. I looked at the current year budget that would have been developed by the prior manager.
Okay. You talked about being stymied a little bit on economic development with lack of sewer availability. Are you an MWRA community?
We are not. However, we are looking to become an MWRA member for the purposes of purchasing water. We'll be able to purchase water about a one-third less than what we currently bill our residents. For sewer, the MWRA is not interested in joining with North Reading. We have to look at other alternatives, and I've spent a lot of time at looking what those alternatives might be.
So are there any area communities that have existing plants? Is it all sort of septic once you're outside of the MWRA?
Precisely. The MWRA ends in Reading and Wilmington, and the cost of connecting to the MWRA sewer system is exorbitant. And one of the challenges is, just to illustrate my point, is the town would be responsible for fixing leaks downstream, and that would include the town of Winchester, and as we all know, every time there's a flood, we hear about the MWRA system failing in Winchester. So the town would own a piece of that problem, and we can't afford that.
Okay. So I can see where you're stuck there. I mean, fortunately here, we've just signed a regional agreement with, goes out 25 years with the surrounding communities. We think we have adequate capacity for as long as we can anticipate. Not every place is connected. There are still connection issues in some of the surrounding communities, but we don't think we have capacity issues, which I think is important for the future of economic development in the region. So you might find that a little bit more enticing were you to come here. I wanted to also ask you about the e-government award that you won for the website. How long ago was that?
Couple years ago.
Okay.
We took a lot of pride in terms of getting information out on our website, and if you've been on it lately, it probably has fallen a bit behind, and I'll admit that, because if you've been on there, you'll probably not find the most updated things, but it's one of the things that we took pride in providing information for our residents who will be looking for documents,
Okay.
material, minutes, agendas, and your website is rich in terms of providing those items also.
What about like interactive ability to pay a bill or things like that, or access your own billing information? Did it have those types of features?
All of the above. We find that, I don't know whether the city is any different, but I find that if people don't have to come to town hall to pay a bill, and we can provide them with an online service that allows them to do that, they do. So we give people the opportunity to pay bills. They can do it through the online system, including real estate, and any other bills and charges that the town has, including their trash bill, because we do bill out separately for trash. And we're working toward putting a number of our permitting systems online so that the public can also file permitting documents online at the same time.
All right. And you also said you implemented a migration to the Munis system, or you
Yes.
tested other systems?
Yes.
How long ago was that? Was that?
Munis has been, this would be the second year that we're with it, and we are presently in the final phase. And the final phase is migrating over our public utilities, our water, and our trash, and migrating that from an existing program, which is called Point, to the Munis system. It's a bit of a challenge because data needs to be converted from one system to the other, but that's really the final major phase that we need to go through. I think that Munis is a very rich system. It provides time and attendance that we don't have. It provides other automation features that we're not presently using, but we do use it for our accounting, our treasury. We will be using it for our utility billing. We will not be using it for our assessing and property values, which is a separate program, and we use it for our purchasing system. So that's the components that are in place right now.
You said utilities, do you have a municipal light plan?
No, I meant water.
Water,
I
okay.
mean, we call it utility because that's the program that you purchase and you implement is called their utility program.
Okay. The major employers in town that you had mentioned, are they expanding, growing? Are they running up against the issue of lack of sewer? Trying to,
The Teradyne facility, which is located over on Concord Street, which is right off of I-93 if you drive by, that's in North Reading. And there was a special legislative act that allowed them to connect into the sewer system in the MWRA through the town of Wilmington. So as far as that particular location is concerned, sewering is not an issue. If you were to look at the remainder of Concord Street, which is heading out toward Route 62, you see a lot of trucking terminals, warehouses, that type of business. These are businesses that are probably located within a half a mile. Properties are located within a half mile of I-93. And because of the limitations on sewer infrastructure, those are the areas that we want to address first in terms of sewer expansion.
okay. All right, I think in a prior life I was involved in the permitting of that building, but was that Lotus there at one point?
Yeah, I think so. So Teradyne is the major employer. Kiva Systems, I mentioned, is
Yeah.
associated with Amazon, which is a major player in the community also.
Okay.
And they're both on Concord Street.
So obviously that's a big focus of us. We'd like to attract those types of companies, here.
So wouldn't I.
Okay. But at least you were able to keep the ones you had.
Maybe they'll come here.
Right, okay.
But Teradyne, in terms of its stability, like every business over the last 5 to 6 years, they suffered. I mean, there were really some issues, and we had some fears when we were going through the bond rating reports, and they ask you about your major employers and how healthy they are. And there were some real concerns that we had in terms of their long-term vitality and their ability to continue their workforce at the present levels.
Okay. One last thing, if I have time. I think I applaud the fact that you mentioned that you have a drug problem in town, because I think I think every town has that, every city has that. Not everybody's frank about admitting it. And I think people would like to do more, but people don't know what to do. So you mentioned that you had some police activity to try and address that, but did you go in, is there anything else you try to do, I guess maybe on the demand side as opposed to the supply side?
Yeah, we have a youth program. We have a youth commission and a youth services director who works very closely with the schools and with the police department to address the people who are young, who may be impressionable, to try to convey to them how important it is that they make the right choices in their life. And it's the early intervention program that we have in place. That position originally started off being someone more of an organizer, let's go to the movies type of thing, let's go on a whitewater rafting trip. And it's very much migrated to more toward the substance abuse issues at a younger age. And there are grant programs that are available to provide even more support in that area. So frankly, that's where that position is going, is more involvement with the schools and the police department in terms of circumventing the young users who may be looking for illegal substances.
Okay.
It's really important.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Council Mercia?
Thank you very much, and good evening,
Hi.
Mr. Balakonis.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, and thank you for your participation. And I'm very impressed with your long tenure for the different towns that you've worked in, and I don't feel bad to hear that you received a bad review after 8.5 years, because I liken being a city manager to sitting in a hot bath. The longer you're in it, the colder it gets. So that is my feeling on that. And you did say that you've driven by the city to go to North Reading. You never stopped here.
I've been in City Hall. I've been here. I've been in City Hall. I've been in the community a number of times.
So can you tell me what you know about the city? Name something that you know about our city.
That your city, in terms of your council manager form of government, has a long history, that people have come here who have good reputations. Your reputation in the field is a community that supports the council manager form of government. It's one of the things that's attracted me. I'm sure someone's going to ask and say, why do you want to come here? That's one of the things that would attract me. The park system that's here, the redevelopment of some of the older mill properties for housing is something that I find intriguing. In terms of the university has certainly gained a position of prominence in this city, and it's something that you should be very proud of. People talk very proudly about the University of Massachusetts that's here, and it really has contributed to putting your city on the map. And I have to imagine that whoever you choose as a city manager needs to enjoy a very strong relationship with the university going forward. I know the history of your city. When my daughter was young, we went through the park system here, and we admired everything that was taking place. I know that your city, like all cities, has traffic congestion issues. I've heard and read about them. I know that City Manager Lynch was often talked about those issues. I know that there are matters related to trying to increase your public safety staffing, particularly in the area of the police department, that's a priority and something that needs to be done. Like any town, you need to control your fixed costs. And so that's obviously a key issue also. So that's kind of my snapshot view of your city.
Did you have community policing, so to speak, in North Reading?
We did, although it was established under the prior administration, and other than providing additional bodies, I'm not really sure that it was successful in its earliest role.
What is your relationship with the state in terms of bringing money to our city?
North Reading receives a fraction of state aid compared to your city. I know that 50% of your operating revenues come from Chapter 70 and unrestricted local government aid. So I will tell you that the manager best enjoy a strong relationship with the legislative delegation that is here and speak passionately about the community and the city's needs for additional funding. As the funding of Chapter 70 and unrestricted aid goes, and especially Chapter 70, is the fate of your budget. Your budget is uniquely situated that it's so dependent upon state aid that you best enjoy a strong relationship with the legislative delegation, and you best understand how those monies will be divided up in the political process and debate that happens in Boston. And so that would be one of the things that I would consider to be a priority, absolutely critical job one type of thing that I'd have to get into.
What role does the neighborhood play in the health of the city? The neighborhood groups. We have quite a few neighborhood groups in the city.
And I have to admit that's probably one of the bigger challenges that the new city manager faced is understanding the stakeholders and the constituencies that make your city unique. I'm not afraid to admit that because in a town of North Reading, it's relatively vanilla, you know?
Yes.
So it's the city, and you have to reach out to those groups in whatever capacity that you feel necessary to engage them, because it's vital.
I'm going to ask you this kind of a tough question. Probably I shouldn't, but I will anyway. I feel like the girl that was chosen second to go to the prom, how do you convince me that Lowell is a good fit for you, considering that you thought Dracut was a good fit? Convince me that you now want to come here.
Yeah, that's a fair question, considering the fact that I was an applicant just on the other side of the river not too long ago. My tenure in North Reading is winding down. I'm honest about the fact that I'm there for a few more months. I want to stay in Massachusetts. I know of the planning form of government, as I mentioned to you before. It intrigues me, the fact that the city of Worcester and Lowell have that form of government. I believe the city of Cambridge does also. So I'm a professional. The community that I work in, I'm passionate about. I will dedicate my full effort, regardless of the fact that I was a candidate in another town, and I will dedicate myself to being the best city manager that you can possibly have. I don't feel upset about what happened up there. They found a candidate that frankly fit their image for the position. I think that all of the candidates were equally qualified. They found someone that personality-wise fit in well with them, and I commend them on that. I'm disappointed that I wasn't that person, but my disappointment is short-lived because I have an opportunity to come here and try to tell you that I'm a professional in my aspect and my approach to the job. And I believe that that's probably the most important thing that I could say in terms of my willingness to come here and want to be considered for the position.
Right, and I understand somewhat what you're saying, but why was Drake a better fit than Lowell? In what respect? The size of the population or
Town meeting form of government.
the type of government?
Town meeting form of government is the same. The position in Drake, someone was there for 27 years.
How many miles is it from Shrewsbury to Lowell?
About 35 miles from my house to the front steps of Town Hall.
Would you ever consider moving here?
Yeah, I think one of the situations that I have, as I mentioned, I have a daughter. She's in college. Yeah, I think that your person, to be a complete manager, to be a stakeholder, it probably makes sense that you consider yourself as being someone who wants to live here. I mean, that's part of what gives you credibility, what gives you integrity on the job versus being someone that marches out of town at the end of the day and goes home. So yeah, why not?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg, for being here, and good evening. Let me begin by saying that I did go on the North Reading website, and I did come across the strategic plan that was adopted by the Board of Selectmen. I want to say it was in November of 2010. Can you just share with this council the process that the town went through to come up with that strategic plan, which I believe talks about where North Reading would like to be in 2015? And how was that communicated to the towns, to the residents, and has it been updated since it was adopted in 2010? And I guess another question would be, have you been successful in meeting some of the goals and objectives that were outlined back 4 years ago?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The strategic plan, the process that's used is the board has an annual work session. And what they do is they start off with, we have a facilitator come in, and the discussion is about the SWOT analysis, if you've heard it: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and trends. So you go through that, and you have a discussion about all of those things as they relate to the community. And from that, the board begins a discussion in terms of what they consider to be their strategic goals and strategic visions. I believe that their strategic plan that was put together is extremely detailed. And I would have preferred, frankly, that the enumeration of the different projects and tasks that are outlined in there would have been something that the departments would have developed versus the board. But nonetheless, that's what the board wanted to do. They wanted to define very much up front that these are the things that they felt were really important. And one of the things that was identified in the project was the school construction project, which is ongoing right now. It's a $118 million new high school being built, and a renovation of the middle school was in there. Other strategic initiatives that have taken place is the replacement of senior personnel with younger personnel, settlement of collective bargaining agreements similar to what was discussed over here earlier, with eliminating some of the more costly items that were in the contract that put the town in a weak financial position. I think one of the things that I wanted to, since you're on the strategic plan, and I think it's part of your question, is one of the most important things that I have to do is I have to take that plan and bring it to the department heads and say, you need to develop goals and objectives around this strategic plan that the board has put in place. And the powers of entropy are very strong when you bring something like that to the board. And to the department heads, one of the most critical functions of your manager is that person needs to implement the strategic vision of the board. And that then requires bringing that plan to the department heads and having the department heads develop programs around what the board's vision is. And, you know, in terms of what I think is important and what I do on my job, that's it. That's it. That and dealing with all the other issues and then getting back to the board and conveying, we may not have accomplished these things because of lack of money or because we had a staffing issue or someone left or something happened. But generally what we try to do on a day in and day out basis is follow the mission and the tasks that are identified in that plan. And that's the job. In addition to the finances and the personnel, that's a big piece of the job.
Right. I mean, I remember reading that there were acres and acres of industrial commercial land that really stood vacant and was not being developed. Has any of that industrial commercial land been developed since the plan was?
Yeah, part of it's been developed for housing. So as
For
I
housing.
mentioned to you before, the town had a problem with its affordable, 10% affordable housing threshold. We're now at 9.7%. So it's always a moving number and you have to stay ahead of it. The other piece of that property that's referred to is land that's under the control of the Department of, it used to be the Department of Capital Planning. I know that has a new name and a new iteration. But the Commonwealth actually owns that property. And the Commonwealth controls when that property is put out to bid and what the town can identify what it wants to see there, and we can articulate that, but then the bidders need to come in and say, this is what we're willing to pay to build what the town wants on that site. And that piece hasn't been completed. And it hasn't been completed because of the downturn in the economy that we all saw back in 2007, 2008. And although there was a successful bid, it never happened.
Okay.
It never happened.
Okay, thank you. In Lowell, as you probably know, we have a split tax rate with the residential rate.
Yeah.
We have a commercial rate. Residential rate's about half of what our commercial rate currently is. What would your approach be to trying to really get the commercial rate under control? I think we're about $32 per thousand currently. And from an economic development standpoint, how would you go about trying to deal with the fact that area towns adjacent to, we're part of the Middlesex 3 Coalition, which takes us from Lowell down to Bedford, and looking at economic development, and their tax rates are somewhat lower than Lowell's. So what would your approach be from an economic development
Yeah,
standpoint to
I
get
mean,
that under control?
That's a real good question, and the fact that you have a separate rate for commercial industrial is not unusual. Most economic cities have a dual tax rate, so right out of the gate, you're not unusual in terms of you're not the outlier. Changes in that tax rate have to be done incrementally. You can't take a ship that's been sailing in one direction for the last 25 or 30 years and spin the wheel and adopt a single tax rate. What you need to do is you need to look at doing it incrementally with regard, but you also have to look at how it would affect the residential rate, which gets to the point as to why new development and new growth is vital. Perhaps you look at the amount that's being raised in new growth as perhaps offsetting the commercial industrial rate on an annual basis, and that's how you begin turning it to be a more equitable, distributable formula. That's just an idea that I have.
Okay, no, thank you. My last question has to do with a comment you made earlier about working with the Metropolitan Planning Commission. So you do work with a regional planning agency. We do actually have one here in the city, but in thinking about city services going forward, and trying to deal with a budget that, again, we're looking this year at maybe a 3.5% tax increase. Are there any city services that you would be comfortable recommending to the council that we would regionalize in an effort to try to save?
Absolutely. I think you have to look at regionalization as being something that's important, not only because you want it, but because the public wants it. We keep hearing that the public demands that cities and towns look to regionalize, consolidate, privatize. All of those things need to be considered. So in terms of the specific recommendations that I would have, that would be a little bit of a challenge at this point, because I could throw that out there and then be held to it without really understanding the entirety of the organization. But I can tell you things like health inspections can be effectively regionalized. Inspectional services, code enforcement can be done on a regional basis. I will know the new coming town manager in the neighboring town of Drake, and I'm sure we could have a very interesting dialogue in terms of things that we could do cooperatively, because I know that that community has the same question, is what can we do on a regional basis? Also internally, consolidation of services with the schools. So it could be providing services through the schools. But I've also said before, and you have to look at regionalization in terms of providing you with an equal, the other part of the analysis, there's another part of the analysis, which is determining that the level of services that you're receiving for this regionalization are sufficient to meet the city's needs. And if it's not, then you got a problem. Even no matter how great it sounds on paper to regionalize, consolidate, privatize, if the level of services are gonna drop, then I best analyze that and make you aware that before we do it, this is the implications of it. So there's kind of that piece that needs to be vetted out and investigated before you jump into it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rourke?
Good evening, Mr. Belkos. How are you? Before I get to my questions, I just had a couple of follow-ups that other councilors had asked you about. Councilor Leahy asked you a terrific question about what you did to bring the fire department from basic to advanced life support services. Was your answer that North Reading now collects $700,000 a year from a contract for that?
No, we don't. We have it, it's in-house, and we collect $700,000 a year in revenues through billing from ALS services.
Through a private contract?
No, it's all done in-house.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
It's all done with existing staff.
Great. And also, you mentioned something about your finance director as well. Could you expound a little bit on what happened with your finance director and how you handled that type of situation as a town administrator?
You mean the problem with the
Yes.
person that was there previously? We went into town meeting and voted a budget that was $1 million out of balance. It was due to the fact that the finance department didn't do the diligence that was necessary and the analysis that was necessary to make sure that the motions that were prepared were appropriate. I will prepare the motions with the assistance of the finance director. It was careless math, for lack of a better word. There's no big science involved. It just was careless math. But that careless math had serious implications to the community. Trust was breached, and the people questioned the competence of the people who were making decisions. So I had to make a decision. I liked the person that was there. He was competent, but it was time to move on and separate with that individual in the interest of preserving public integrity and trust. And that was really important and vital, and it was done. And it was done quickly, and we ended up with a person who's done very well.
Thank you. Take us through a typical weekly selectmen's meeting in North Reading.
Sure. Starts on it seems like it's never a never-ending cycle, to be honest with you. They meet every other week, so they don't meet every week. It's every other first and third Mondays of the month. We begin to assemble items from the meeting because the board will indicate that there weren't certain items to be on the agenda or certain discussion items. And I will speak to my staff as part of my morning meeting the next day that there are certain items that need to carry forward onto the next agenda. And we begin building the agenda on that basis. On a Wednesday, Wednesday before the meeting, I would speak with the chairman of the board. We would review the agenda. He would make changes and adjustments to it based upon whether he wanted items added, deleted, or changed in any way that they were there. So we'll have an ongoing discussion with the chairman of the board on a weekly basis about the items that he wishes to have on the agenda. On a Thursday, we complete the agenda for a Monday meeting. The agenda is done in electronic format. It's placed in a repository called Dropbox, which is a secure location where the board members then go in and retrieve the agenda and all of the accompanying items, including motions and positions that have been adopted with regard to items that are on the agenda. The agenda is detailed in the sense that the motions are all printed in advance. There are positive motions and negative motions. Some of those motions may require input and consultation of town council, particularly with regard to licensing issues. If there is a licensing issue that's coming before the board, and the board potentially could be denying a liquor license or a liquor license transfer, you best make sure that that motion is properly worded, because if it's not, you're gonna find yourself down in front of the ABCC defending the decision on a technicality or flaw that was included in that license. So the agenda is completed on a Thursday. It's done electronically out to the board. On Monday, I would go back and, as you know, government is a consistently evolving organization, and the board members do become frustrated that there are necessary updates to the agenda. So on a Monday, we would do updates to the agenda. There may be some things that are changed. Those would again be done electronically and reposited in the Dropbox. And then I typically would meet with the chairman prior to the meeting with any last-minute questions and issues that are going on. The meetings, my role has evolved a little bit over the time, where I was very much involved in introducing every subject matter that came before the board. I liked it because meetings were a lot faster in those days. That doesn't happen anymore, so that if you go and you look at how it's done right now, the chairman and the board members introduce individual items. That's the board's preference in terms of the fact that they wanted to do that. I'm comfortable with it, but I'm also comfortable with the fact that I may be introducing items before the board and introducing departments who may be there to support items that are on the agenda. And then that's the process that we use, and I may have missed a couple of little steps along the way, but we don't do a paper agenda or a paper package. And the board members all have iPads that they use during the course of the meeting to keep track of everything that's going on. And our budget document is also done in electronic format. There was a time where the board members sat with big, thick notebooks, and every time there was a change in a budget number, we'd take out a page and insert. It's all done electronically. What we do is we delete the old one, we drop in the new one, and then the board members download that onto their website, to their iPads.
Great, thank you. You had mentioned both when you answered the question earlier and in your presentation to us that the goal is for 5% net reserves. Are you at that now?
Yeah, we're over it. Because if you look at the town's stabilization fund, which is in excess of $2 million, and you look at the amount that we have free cash certification, a little bit over $1 million, but we also have some special purpose stabilization funds that we've established. So I would gather that we're closer to the 7% of net revenues in terms of our reserves at this point.
Okay. Could you give me a scenario where you would tap into Lowell's reserves?
Yeah. We have a water reserve account. The water reserve account is a result of some class action litigation that the town joined on to a number of years ago and received a very lucrative financial settlement. We buy about $1.1 to $1.2 million of water from the town of Andover on an annual basis. The town of Andover has been indicating that they'd like to see the increase in water be 5%, a 5% increase for next fiscal year. We have budgeted a 2.5% increase for water, and that's what the board finds acceptable in terms of going out to the public. So the gap between what we anticipate the cost of water would be and what we would bill our ratepayers for, we would look at something that potentially could be paid for through this water stabilization account to lessen the impact on taxpayers. We also have another stabilization fund that's in place for debt and capital. So during the period of time when the economy was very challenged, we were diligent about going to each budget at the end of the fiscal year and emptying that budget and putting almost every single dollar into these stabilization funds. And you say, why? Because of the way municipal accounting is done, that those actual dollars could be gone in the accounting calculation because the town has significantly more in outstanding receivables than it collected, and that's an offset on free cash. So our feeling was to maintain those dollars and keep those dollars. We diligently created stabilization funds, and at the end of every fiscal year, we went back and we analyzed our budgets and we transferred out before June 30th any balances so that those monies could be maintained, again, because of the fact that in the calculation that DOR uses, that money could be gone. And I don't mean stolen gone, I mean, on a piece of paper, it's not there anymore, and it's not available as a source of funds. So that's why we have a lot of these special purpose stabilization funds in place, and we're doing quite well. We replenish, and we will go through that exact same process. We have a town meeting in June. We'll go through the exact same process again to take money from our accounts and put it into this stabilization fund to the extent we possibly can do it.
Okay, thank you. You've been a town administrator for over 8 years. How has the performance of new growth been over that time?
New growth? We're pretty conservative in all of our revenue estimates. So new growth is budgeted conservatively. And the town has the luxury of budgeting its estimated receipts conservatively. And I say, I don't want to take credit for that, because that's a factor of the economy and the type of community that you're in. New growth has ranged on the high side, 860, 870,000. On the low side, probably in the range of $300,000. We've also had significant turnover in the assessing manager position. We since have found some stability there. But the new growth number probably consistently is in the range of $400,000 to $500,000 a year.
And how active are you in North Reading's educational system?
Very, because it's one of the things that the people value most in the community. And it's one of the things that translates to the town maintaining its attractiveness and property values. So the community feels that education is very important. Doesn't mean that we throw money at education. What we do is I sit down and I understand what the school's needs are, and I'm able to sit down with the superintendent and identify what we have available for monies. Presently, the budget for June town meeting is in balance, except for the schools. I work cooperatively with the school superintendent, and I'm working with her right now to identify additional monies to lower the deficit that the schools have for fiscal year 2015. I'm doing that because I have knowledge of the revenue side. I know where potentially we could bring in additional revenue or make cuts on the town side to provide funding for the schools. But again, that's unique to North Reading, that education is very important. I know that education is important to your community, and there's that net school spending number that's always a challenge. It's not a challenge in North Reading, but certainly someone who has his eyes open, I know that the next city manager needs to work with the schools to make sure that we stay abreast of that number.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Samaras.
Greg, welcome to Lowell. and
I thank you very much.
Thank you for being a candidate. Okay, Councilman Milonazo talked about a possible 3.5% raise in taxes. And we're talking about hiring 5 new policemen because the public has spoken about safety. It's a major concern. We're talking about refurbishing our schools or building a new high school. All these things come at a price. And we are finding it, as a community, we're finding it difficult to maintain services without a tax increase. How would you guide this council and the community in making the difficult choices? Would you look at budget, besides regionalization, would you look at budget reduction, finding a reduction in other areas, or would you look at a tax increase, knowing that the community wants to expand and grow? At the same time, many of our senior citizens find it quite difficult to pay their taxes and don't want to see a tax increase.
I think
Just using that as a...
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I know that your tax increase that you saw between fiscal 2013 and 2014 was minimal. I think the city manager said that there was no increase, that the increase was related to new growth. And that's to be commendable, given the fact that you can fit all of your programs within the available monies that you have. I'm aware of the fact that the community, I would not sit here and say to you, until I can actually look at the budget and analyze and understand all of the elements of the budget, that there would be no tax increase. But however, based upon what I understand the position of the council is, I would work diligently to make sure that that goal was accomplished, because I think that it's important given the situation that you described. In terms of funding priorities, not everyone is created equal. You know, unfortunately, public safety in a community such as Lowell is critical. What I've read is that it's understaffed in some regards. And given the situation in an urban area with crime rates and safety issues, it has to be a priority. And so I would certainly make it my priority in terms of adding new positions. And if it meant that we would make potential cuts in other areas, that would be investigated and reviewed. But I clearly understand that safety is an issue in this community. I also understand that schools are important. And, you know, I have to say, as someone who's sitting here today, schools are important because they provide, they maintain your property values. And but it doesn't mean it's necessarily you just give people whatever they want. I wouldn't look at major cuts to safety, any really cuts to safety until I had an opportunity to go in. And maybe there's a different way of restructuring the system that's in place right now. But as I understand, 75% of the budget is made up between schools, police, fire, and DPW.
Correct.
So, you know, that would correspondingly account for 75% of the time that I would spend looking for ways to fund programs in those areas. That said, there are many offices and operations that exist within this building that are vital to the management and oversight of city government. Those offices have no constituency. There's no constituency for your assessor's office or tax collector's office, but you can't function without them. Under statute, you have to have those offices. You have to have a code enforcement department and a building department office. So you want to make sure that the staffing in those offices is equal to the need that is there and not in excess of the needs that are there.
Thank you. A thought question. As a professional manager, thinking back over the past few years, in which situation did you make the best use of your technical or problem-solving skills? Can you describe a specific challenge that brought out the best in your skills?
Yeah, I can. And there was one that I thought of right out when you raised the question. We have a town meeting in June of every year. And we typically hold a special town meeting the night of the annual town meeting. The purpose of the special town meeting is to address current year budget issues. I mentioned before about transferring money out of accounts to go into these stabilization funds. And there's a number of housekeeping issues that you don't need to go through as a council form of government, but towns do. So the special town meeting has a quorum. The annual town meeting doesn't have a quorum. So we get into town meeting, and we wait around for a half hour, and 20 people show up. And the quorum is 100 people, and there's not 100 people there. And so therefore, all of the items that we hope to accomplish in that special town meeting were now suddenly off the table. And there were different things that we're using monies from the current year to be transferred into the next fiscal year. So tactical skills and problem-solving skills is asking the moderator for a recess, sitting down with the finance director and the chair of the Board of Selectmen and the chair of the Finance Committee, and working through every single one of those issues that we could possibly find to somehow creatively fit it within the context of the annual town meeting where we didn't need a quorum. We're successful probably in accomplishing 90%, 80% of the things that we wanted to do. Some of them we just couldn't get to because there wasn't a companion article on the annual town meeting, but it required us to think quickly, on the fly, under pressure, with people there and wanting to have answers. And I know that at the end, I may have disagreements with my board, but I know at the end they were very complimentary and very pleased with how it turned out.
Good answer, thank you. Back to the public safety issue, because I think you made us aware that you're aware of what's been going on in this city. We have a good city, and the statistics will say that we're a relatively safe city. But there have been various spikes in crime, especially serious crime. And we want to assure our community that our neighborhoods, make sure our neighborhoods are safe, that the downtown is safe. And as I said to one candidate, I don't expect to see you as a city manager in one of our cruisers. We have a chief of police who's doing a fine job. He's new to it, but he's come up with great ideas and how to make this a safer city. And we talked about hiring 5 new officers. But where I'm coming with this question, I'll give you part of the answer. If you look at Boston and you look at Mayor Menino's success over the years. If there was a murder at 3 o'clock in the morning, Mayor Menino was there. And why do you think he was there, and how would you see yourself in this city as the face of the city, the manager, reacting to or helping our community understand that we're supporting their safety?
Yeah, the mayor would be there because he truly is vested in his community. And your manager should show a similar level of being vested in this community. To have someone show up and then sweep out of town at the end of the day and not come back is always hard. In terms of how it would translate to public safety, was that your question, how?
I mean, the thing is, you are the face, you are the face of the city. But the thing is, Mayor Menino is showing that he's vested in his city. How would you show that you're vested in this city to make the public aware that we take safety really seriously, and we just don't leave it up to the police department? But what do you
Right.
see yourself doing to help us?
Right, now I understand your question, and it's actually a good one, is the manager needs to articulate in terms of his budget recommendations and his staffing recommendations, things that the chief has identified that are needs for the community. So you have to find a way to provide additional staffing to the extent you have the monies to be able to do that. Show support to your chief, be visual in the community with the chief and with other community leaders in terms of dealing with issues related to law enforcement. I'm not gonna ride around in a police cruiser. I mean, I've never done it, and I don't pretend that that's my job and what I would need to do, but I would feel comfortable in meeting with the chief and articulating his vision and making it part of my plan for the city and for its needs. Beyond that, I can't really answer too much more other than to say I understand that it's a priority, and it would be my priority also.
How much time? Thank you for your being here tonight. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor. You're welcome. You're welcome to a closing statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I gotta say, it's been an exhausting time. I'm battling my cold, so I know what it's like. My cold medicine's about to run out. Your community is in an interesting situation. You're not only trying to find a manager, but you're trying to find a leader. And leadership is one of those things that's difficult to quantify. You can quantify the skills in terms of being a budget manager, human resources director, person that deals effectively with staff and with citizens that come in. But I understand that you're looking for more than that. Hopefully, you will find that I've had those skills. You can't survive in this field unless you have some of those qualities and those skills. I'm also wise enough to realize that the person needs to be outside of the office. I know that. I know that an effective manager can't survive by sitting behind his desk every day. You need to be responsive to the citizenry. You need to be responsive to the council. I would view myself as being a strong candidate. I have strong skills in those areas. I have a desire to stay in my profession. I'm not here on a whim. I'm not here to think that there's maybe greener pastures in another position, in another city, or in another career. This is what I do for a living. The gray hairs on my head are earned as a result of doing my job every single day. It's challenging, it's hard, and guess what? It never gets easy. So I realize that, and I realize that that's the type of qualities that you're looking for: resiliency, persistence, leadership. And hopefully I've shown you some of those traits here today. Hopefully you have an opportunity to know a little bit about me as a person. I think that that's as important as the skills that I would bring to the job. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the professionalism that you showed me as a counsel. Intelligent questions, classy individuals, and that really makes me feel quite well, because part of the process of being here is you finding out about me, but also me finding out a little bit about you. And I must say I'm impressed. And I'm impressed with how you formulated your questions. They were difficult, they were hard, but I expected that they would be. And in closing, I thank you for your time. I look forward to an opportunity to perhaps tell you more about me. I would encourage you that if you have any questions whatsoever about me and who I am and the job that I do, that you drop a dime, you show up in North Reading, you poke around, and you validate some of the things that I said to you today. Feel free to talk to my staff. I'm sure they'll be cooperative. You don't need my permission to do so. What I would do is I would drop them an email and just indicate that they may be receiving a phone call from members of the Lowell City Council. I think that's how you can find out more about me. And again, thank you for your time. This has been a fun evening.
Thank, thank you, Mr. Balakonis. I think on behalf of the council, we certainly appreciate the time and effort that you have put into coming and spending time with us tonight and coming to share your thoughts with us. So we thank you. If there's members of the council want to take a 5-minute, we'll take a 5-minute recess, and then we will come back for the next candidate. it's always good to hear feedback the next day, isn't it? Just like when you don't think it's bad enough. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We'll, before we proceed with the second round of interviews, could we please have a roll call?
Counsel Belanja,
Here.
Mayor Elliott,
Here.
Counsel Kennedy,
Here.
Counsel Leahy,
Here.
Counsel Martin,
Here.
Counsel Mercia,
Here.
Counsel Milonazo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke.
Here.
Counsel Samara.
Yeah.
9 present. Just want to announce for the viewing audience that interviews had previously, moving forward next week, we have a special meeting with the city council for the selection of a city manager, but also there have been interviews scheduled for the city auditor. And it's we schedule them on an evening where the school committee meets. So we will be reposting a special meeting to proceed with auditor interviews for Thursday and not Wednesday. So there will be no interviews on Wednesday, but we'll be doing that on Thursday. So with that, we'll proceed. Representative Murphy, welcome back to City Hall. Welcome to the City Council chambers. Kindly have a seat, and like all the other candidates, you're welcome to a 10-minute opening statement, and then we'll proceed with each individual council. We'll have a 10-minute question and answer period, and then we will close with a closing statement. So, thank you. Let's proceed.
Mayor Elliott, members of the City Council, thank you for bestowing this honor upon me of interviewing for the position of City Manager. It is certainly a profound responsibility to be the Chief Administrator of a city the size and the historical significance of the City of Lowell. I would be deeply honored and humbled if I was so chosen. Now let me tell you why I want to be City Manager. I love this city. This is my home. I've lived here my entire life. I'm the parent of a child who received a world-class education in the Lowell Public Schools. I'm your neighbor. I'm the one you see in the market, the diner, and church. We have a shared destiny for this city. What matters to you matters to me. We want Lowell to be the best city that it can be, where all residents can thrive, where each person can find a job or start a business, where each person or family can live in a decent home, where all of our streets are safe, where we protect our parks, our rivers, and our forest, where we have access to the best health care in the nation and world-class education from kindergarten through doctoral programs. We want a place like Lowell is today, but even better, even stronger, even more caring, even more ambitious, and even more forward-thinking. We are in a good place, but we can get better. I believe I bring a special preparation to this job through a combination of my education and my practical career experience. Of particular importance is my own ongoing work as a member of the House of Representatives Committee on Ways and Means, where I play a critical role in formulating the state's annual budget totaling $34 billion. Part of my job requires projecting revenues and then funding items such as unrestricted government aid for municipalities like Lowell, Chapter 70 education funds, Shannon grants to target gang and youth violence, and other funding mechanisms so important to a city of Lowell. For 4 years, I was the chairman of the Committee on Higher Education. Again, I was intimately involved in formulating the $1 billion higher education budget across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. My job was to meet with the president of the University of Massachusetts system, all the chancellors of the universities, and all the presidents of the state universities and community colleges. With those individuals, I would review their past accomplishments, I would refine their budgets, and we would formulate long-term financial strategies, not only for their operating budget, but for their capital improvements. With regards to municipal experience, I was proudly the Assistant City Solicitor for Lowell for over 13 years. During this period of time, I gained knowledge of the critical functions of the City of Lowell government. I drafted ordinances, and I defended those ordinances. I negotiated contracts, and I defended the city in numerous litigation manners. I learned how to manage the City of Lowell government. The success of any city manager will be his or her ability to negotiate contracts that satisfy all parties. I have extensive labor and collective bargaining experience. As my resume would show, I've negotiated for the management of the Lowell Housing Authority. I represent the bus drivers of the Lowell Regional Transit Authority. As general counsel for the Dracut School Committee, I am involved in labor issues, and of course, when I was Assistant City Solicitor in Lowell, I was involved in labor issues. It's critical to have those type of negotiation and collective bargaining skills, because any contract is going to have far-reaching effects for future budgets and operations of the City of Lowell. I have extensive knowledge of negotiating, interpreting, and enforcing collective bargaining agreements. To effectively manage any enterprise, you must hire the right people. I've been a successful lawyer and a successful state representative, and I didn't do that by myself. I've always had the opportunity and the knowledge to surround myself and hire top-notch professionals to work in my office. Communication and collaborative skills are paramount in a leadership role such as city manager. Throughout my 18 years as a state representative, I've proven my ability to communicate and collaborate with all areas of government. I've worked with 4 governors, both Democrat and Republican. I have a wonderful relationship with Congresswoman Tsongas, obviously the state delegation, and I believe with the city council that sits here now and members that have sat here before you. I promise to work with each and every city councilor to make this city better. To do otherwise would be unacceptable. Lowell is a city of immigrants. From the beginning, immigrants have come here to start a new life in America. I'm proud to represent one of the few minority-majority districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. In other words, the majority of the residents of my district are recognized members of a minority group. Therefore, through my experience, I know the challenges that face immigrants when they come here to the city of Lowell. But I also have the unshaken belief in the great benefits that immigrants bring to the city of Lowell. And I promise that city government will work for all of the residents of the city of Lowell. And I will continue the progress that former city manager Bernie Lynch made in making our workforce, boards, and commissions reflective of our entire population. I feel I'm uniquely qualified to work with this council in refining a strategic vision for the city of Lowell to embrace the possibilities of the 21st century. I humbly ask you to give me the opportunity to serve as city manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Murphy. First individual to start the line of questioning tonight, as was with the prior candidate, is Council Belanger. Council Belanger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Representative Murphy, thank you for showing up this evening, and thank you for your interest in serving Lowell in a larger capacity than you already do. It's greatly appreciated. But my first question to you is that regarding to your successful law firm that's been in business for nearly 30 years, if you are selected manager, obviously you won't be a state representative any longer, but do you have any intention on practicing law at any level?
No, I'm fortunate that I have an associate that's worked with me for over 10 years who is ready, willing, and able to take over my duties in running the law practice, and I know he'll do a wonderful job. But no, I will not be practicing law.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Now, Kevin, let's talk about your time. You're nearly 17 years state representative, and I formerly lived in your district for most of the time up till a few months ago, and I feel you've done right by your constituents as well as the city residents. And your achievements are stated here. You secured funding for M2D2, the Rialto Building, the Acre Urban Revitalization Plan, the JAM Plan, and that's quite some accomplishment. So please elaborate a little bit how these projects, how you are going to move these projects forward, because, from time to time, this is wonderful what you've done for your district, but from time to time, I see myself in the newspaper seeing other communities getting this, getting that. So my question to you, Kevin, is that do you feel you brought to your city all that you could have done as far as grants and subsidies? Do you feel you did the very best for your district?
I think we have. We work as a team at the State House, and I think the delegation has done a terrific job in bringing projects and funding to the city of Lowell. I don't think there's any secret in the past several years. There's been some dysfunction when it came to communication. Sometimes we didn't know what the priorities or the needs of the city were for certain vehicles. We have many vehicles to find funding for the city of Lowell other than the annual state budget. We have supplemental budgets, we have deficiency budgets, we have bond bills. I think we need to keep the communication going as to what the city's needs are, to inform the delegation what your priorities are when it comes to funding. And therefore, when those vehicles come before the legislature, they're poised to insert those into those vehicles and help out the city of Lowell.
Okay, thank you. There may have been previously a bit of a disconnect between the delegation and the administration, but that's the past. So what I want to know, Kevin, I'm going to put it right on you. Your time, you spent 17 years in Beacon Hill. How is that going to translate well to the residents of Lowell? How are you going to make the Judicial Center a reality? Carry on the Tanner Street Development Plan, which is about to be unveiled. Continue to get funding like Shannon grants to combat gang violence. I want to know from you how the residents of Lowell are going to benefit from your tenure at the State House.
I think a perfect example of how the residents can benefit from my being the city manager is the proposed Air Industrial Park plan. That, to me, is the new frontier in the city of Lowell, and what an industrial base that will bring to the city. But plans like that are slated for a 20-year period. Well, the JAM plan and the Acre Revitalization Plan, when it was first adopted, was a 20-year plan. But through the combination of efforts of funding by the state delegation and the city. The jam plan and the acre plan were completed in 5 to 7 years. I envision that we can jumpstart the Air Industrial Park plan through that same type of combination of state and federal resources. And I look forward to working with the delegation to make sure that they're fully aware of what's needed in the Air Industrial plan and that we get the resources to get it done much quicker than anticipated.
Wonderful. That's very comforting to hear because, you know, when I can see 10, 20-year plans get expedited, because as I always preach, businesses need help now, Kevin, so that's very reassuring to hear. But as you're aware, the new manager's going to hire a new planning and development director. And we have now a way to change our philosophy. I'm not saying things were done wrong or improper in the past, but I think we need to be more proactive than we have been in the past about filling storefronts, not only in the downtown, throughout the city. I would like to see an individual or two designated solely on economic development here in the city, not seeking grants, doing this and multitasking, which it seems to be going on in every department, in every city, in this economy. So how do you feel about this approach towards economic development and bringing the city forward?
I agree with you, and, you know, I think we have to reinvigorate our downtown. And the first way to do it is to go out to the owners of the businesses in downtown and see what type of resources they need to thrive in the city of Lowell. What can we provide to them to make their business work in the city of Lowell? You know, I was proud to be here when the new superintendent of police laid out his reorganization plan and the return to community policing and the importance of foot patrols. Well, if I'm named the city manager, our division of planning and development is going to have their own foot patrols. They're going to have people that are going to go out to the different businesses. They're going to knock on their doors. They're going to find out what they need. They're going to be present in the downtown and get the resources to them and the services that they need to expand their businesses in downtown Lowell.
Very good. Very good. Well, I have no further questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Councilor.
Good evening, Representative Murphy, and thank you for applying and expressing interest in the city manager job. In your cover letter, Mr. Murphy, you reference your experience as assistant city solicitor. How do you feel that will benefit you as a city manager here in the city?
Well, as a lawyer, when you represent your client, you have to become your client. If you represent an auto body shop, you have to learn about auto body repair. So no matter what the business is that you're representing, you have to learn that business. Well, for 13 years when I was assistant city solicitor, I learned the business of City Hall. I represented each and every department in the city of Lowell government. I know their functions, I know their operations, and I think it has done me well in this quest to lead the city of Lowell and to manage the city of Lowell properly.
Well, and in line with those responsibilities, you do also cite the success of the future city managers in large part rests on the ability to negotiate contracts. Can you just elaborate a little bit more? I know you referenced it in your opening statement, but I don't disagree, because considering collective bargaining agreements in the city are a significant part of certainly the operation, as well as some costs that are associated in it that we're trying to negotiate, whether it's buyback sick. And I asked this of the prior candidate as well. I mean, can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that statement?
I think I have the unique experience that I've negotiated for both sides of the bargaining table. I've represented management, and I've represented unions. I know what the needs and desires are of both sides of the bargaining table. I know what a deal kill is. I know how to bring those people together and to get an agreement that's beneficial not only for your workforce, but not negative to the negative impact to the taxpayers of the city of Lowell. So representing both sides of the bargaining table, I think, is a unique skill set that I bring as a city manager.
Okay, thank you. Appointments, I've been disappointed in some of the appointments. Mr. Murphy, I'm going to be, I'm straight up about it. What is but moving forward, we also, over time, we have a lot of vacancies in the appointments. How, and I think they're important, whether it's not just regulatory boards, that we have many, many boards and commissions that we need to keep up with appointments. What would be a process on getting appointments and bringing them forward?
Well, I think we need to better reach out to the community for these appointments. There are plenty of people in the city of Lowell of this size that are committed to public service and would serve on a board and love serving on a board. I think we should advertise in the newspaper what positions are open, obviously on the website. But we have to reach out to these people and get them to apply. And then we can fill our boards, because I think we'll have a good pool of people to choose from in appointing to the boards.
Thank you, Representative. I just have a couple more questions. Your list of accomplishments or list of funding sources coming into the city is quite admirable, and clearly sharing. You've shared the success with the delegation. One of the concerns is there's been so much money coming in to the city as a result of your efforts with former State Senator Panagiotakis and currently Senator Donahue, Representative Golden, Representative Nangle. How do we continue, from a selfish perspective, quite frankly, knowing these projects, the JAM plan, the Hamilton Canal plan, and moving forward, you mentioned the Ayers City. These all require putting together packages, state, federal, local funding sources, tax credits. How do we continue this, knowing that you are a senior member of the delegation, and that is important down at the State House? How do we continue that?
Rest assured, this money didn't come to Lowell only because of me.
Right.
It was a team effort. And when you have 4 people working together on one project, it's much easier to get it done as a team effort. I know that team effort will continue, and I'm positive that a new member of that team will join in the fight, because that's the way to get it done. And I'm sure that the funds will continue to come to City of Lowell.
Okay. Am I all right on time, or? House Ways and Means. You said on House Ways and Means. Can you discuss or explain your role and experience in the budget process at the State House?
We actually begin the budget process for the state in January of each year. As members of the House Ways and Means Committee, we have revenue estimate hearings. So we'll have representatives of the governor's office, administration and finance, come in and tell us what they think the projected revenues are for the state. We have the Department of Revenue come in and testify as to what they think the tax receipts are going to be for the Commonwealth. And then we also have organizations like the Mass Taxpayers Foundation. I'm sure many of you have seen or heard of Michael Widmer. And they will come in and they will tell us what they think their research shows the revenues are going to be for the state. So early on, we have a projected revenue for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What we then do is we have a series of hearings with each and every department in the Commonwealth, where they have to come in and they have to defend their proposed budget. And they have to tell us why they need this much money and what they're going to do with that money. And after we have all of these public hearings, which are many, many of them, then we sit down and we craft the final budget and submit it to the membership for their review, approval, and obvious, on the floor of the House, amendments that they feel are worthy of discussion.
Would you foresee a similar process if you're the city manager here? I mean, I know the time frame is tight here, but we had the prior candidate also spoke of something similar, having, an open and deliberative process with other members, and I know we are in, we're fast approaching the, this fiscal year and need to adopt a budget, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, we're fortunate this year because the legislature has already passed a joint resolution relative to unrestricted general government aid and Chapter 70. So right now, we know what approximately 52% of the City of Lowell revenue is going to be for next year. So that helps us out. There's no guesswork involved in that. If I was given the opportunity to be city manager, I would obviously check those additional revenues like local growth, the tax levy, receipts, parking, all of those revenue projections. But just as important, one of the first things I would do would schedule meetings with each and every department head. I'm a firm believer in performance-based budgeting. And I would make sure that each and every department head would come in and they would justify their budget request for the fiscal year 15 budget. And they're going to have to prove to me that it's justified. Because I have reviewed this budget, the fiscal 15 budget, and it's tight. And it's going to need some work. And the first work is whether we need to trim the budget so that we don't have to seek any other revenues elsewhere.
Okay, thank you, Representative. Next interview is Council Kennedy.
Thank you. Representative Murphy, you're the last of the candidates to be interviewed, and we've gone with a first-name basis on everyone. So rather than to call you Representative Murphy, if I can go with Kevin, I'm sure that that's okay with you.
That would be fine, Councilor.
My first question, and the set of questions for you is a little bit different. I think for a lot of the candidates, we've been asking questions about what they've done in the communities that they've been. With you, the questions probably would be looking forward rather than to reflect on what you've done in the past, or at least mine will be. And so my first question would be, if you were to be selected as city manager, would you accept the position without a contract?
I would not require a contract.
Okay. And one of the projects that's been kicking around, I guess, for lack of a better term, is the Judicial Center. The Judicial Center, what do you think about that? Do you think that that's an important project? Do you think it would have, it's important economically, or that it would foster economic growth in that area? What's your position regarding that project?
I've been pushing that boulder uphill for 15 years. It seems like when I first came into the legislature, the idea came to build a judicial center in Lowell. We've been working on it since then. I think the judicial center is of utmost importance for the Hamilton Canal area. I've had the opportunity in my job as a lawyer to practice law in other communities where there's been a judicial center. You go down to Lawrence to the Fenton Judicial Center, and it spurred economic development in the area, restaurants and cafes, to serve the litigants and the employees of the court system. It's also brought a sense of safeness to the area, because with all of the public safety officers that you have there on a daily basis, it brings safety. My wife has always said the safest street in Lowell is Hurd Street, and I agree with her because the Lowell District Court is there. I've been to New Bedford, where they built a new judicial center. Again, it spurred economic development and a sense of safeness in the area. I think the judicial center is of critical importance for the Hamilton Canal area. It's going to spur further development as far as office space goes, because you're going to need attorneys who want to be close to the judicial center. You're going to need insurance agents who want to service the employees and the litigants of the judicial center. I think it's of utmost importance. I think it is going to happen. I know it's going to happen. I think probably in 2017 we'll be cutting a ribbon and walking inside that judicial center to do business.
Thanks. You mentioned the Tanner Street project.
Yes.
And the Jam project, and you're familiar with those since you've I'm sure, probably as familiar as anybody else is. What would you do to push those projects forward? What initiatives do you think the city could take, or that you would take, your administration would take, to push those projects forward? I think everybody recognizes that they're important projects and that they'd be good for the city, but what initiatives would you take?
I think the first initiative is to provide adequate access to the area. I know they want to do a reconfiguration of the access to the area. What I would do is I would collaborate with the state delegation to meet with the Department of Transportation to discuss what would be the most efficient and expedited way to provide the access to the properties. Because it does you no good to rehabilitate a property if you can't get to it effectively. So I think that's the first thing I would do as far as jump-starting the air industrial, the park in that area.
I think that I'm sure that you realize that if you become the city manager, what you're going to have to do almost right away is to hire a good CFO, good fiscal person, and a good person to run the Division of Planning and Development. What qualities would you look for in each of those positions?
I've been asked that question a lot in the past month, and honestly, I would take that CFO position and I would put it over here. And I would say, I want the most qualified person to take over that position, someone with the credentials and the abilities of Tom Moses, or even better. I think we all agree that the city is in good financial situation right now, but it can get better. We don't want it to go down. So what I would do is, I would look for the best qualified candidate. I would do a search for that candidate. I would contact, I'm sure they have organizations of financial officers that I would contact to seek out applicants. I would talk to the Mass Municipal Association. And I'm not opposed to having a search committee involving the city council so that we select the best possible person for that job.
And the same thing for the DPD.
Absolutely for the DPD. I mean...
Go ahead.
No, that's fine.
One of the early candidates, during his interview, he indicated that in his community, what he did was he reconfigured the Division of Planning and Development a little bit so that there was a focus or a concentration of marketing people that would market the city. Not market the city in, having a slogan and saying it's a great place. Marketing the industrial space that we have that's vacant, marketing the commercial space that we have that's vacant, that's what I mean, that focused marketing. What do you think of that approach?
Well, obviously, branding and marketing is important to any enterprise. I think Chancellor Meehan has proven that at UMass Lowell. I mean, his branding and marketing has been spectacular, and I think we should emulate his efforts at the university. As far as marketing goes, I mean, I know that the Lowell plan in the past has done great marketing for the city of Lowell. I know the Merrimack Valley Visitors and Convention Bureau has done great marketing for the city of Lowell. I agree with you. I think we need a division of planning and development that's out promoting the city, but I think they can all work together in that endeavor.
Okay. And I'm sure that you've thought quite a bit in preparation for the interview about what your vision would be for the city. I think that there's, general agreement on this city council that the city is sound financially, that we want to stay that way. But in order to be able to do that and keep taxes as low as possible, there has to be growth, and that growth comes through economic development. So what would you do off the get-go? Would you focus on Tanner Street and the Jam area, or do you have other ideas, or is there something that you've thought of that maybe would be brand new?
Well, we don't have any natural resources that are going to attract a business to the city of Lowell. But we have one resource that's better than anything, and that's a talented workforce. I've been paying attention a lot to Kendall Square in Cambridge and the incredible invigoration that has happened in Kendall Square. You have companies like Google and Facebook and all these emerging technology companies that have located in Kendall Square. And that has spurred other economic activity like restaurants, insurance companies, whatnot. And there's two reasons that they've located in Kendall Square: Harvard and MIT. The talented workforce that's available right there for them. We have that here in the city of Lowell. We have the University of Massachusetts at Lowell, and we have Middlesex Community College. What I want to do is I want to partner with UMass Lowell. They have their Emerging Technologies and Innovation Center that are developing new technologies. And these new technologies are that close to being a new business. I want to make sure that the city of Lowell is on site. Strike that. Yeah, I want the city of Lowell to be on site at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. So when these companies are ready to do business, we're there to provide space for them. We're there to provide support services for them and say, stay in Lowell. Let's spur business development that way. I can see the downtown opening up to innovation companies. I can see places like Maycom expanding even further with their innovation companies. And I see the Comfort Bedding building attracting innovation companies to do business there. I think that's the best way to spur business development in Lowell, by that partnership between education and the city.
Thank you. Am I good on time? That's it? Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councilor.
Council Leahy?
Thank you. Hi, Kevin, how are you?
Very good, Councilor. How are you?
Let's see. One of my questions is about the bond rating. Can you just explain or give your interpretation on why it's important to keep that good bond rating, and how the approach would be to make sure that we improve on our bond rating now?
Well, it's of utmost importance. I mean, the bond rating is directly related to the interest rate that is charged when we go out to borrow. So the bond rating would have a direct impact on how much we could borrow, or if we could borrow at all. So I understand the need to maintain those reserves, to make sure that we have that proper bond rating, because we're going to have capital projects that need to be done in the future. We all know that. And we're going to have to borrow money to do that. And we have to do it at the lowest cost possible for the taxpayers of Lowell. And having the good bond rating that we have, make sure we're getting it at the lowest rate possible and the lowest cost to the taxpayers. So it's of utmost importance to maintain those reserves as best we can.
Yeah, thank you. Continuing on what Councilor Kennedy was talking about, the economic growth downtown and the relationship with you, Lowell. I've asked about empty space in the downtown and the corridor going up Merrimack Street here. So what we're looking at is second, third floors that are just empty. And I guess there's been a roadblock, maybe because of, the roadblock because of the, getting these buildings back up to code. So do you have any thoughts on how we could jumpstart that process and overcome some of these hurdles, instead of hearing the traditional, well, it's difficult to do because of, what would your thoughts be on trying to get people to work together and say, hey, let's get these second and third floors renovated, let's get this incubator space going?
Well, that's interesting, because most of the buildings are privately owned, so it's difficult to get state funding or federal funding for privately owned buildings. But I think we certainly could look into that. I think that Tommy, David, and I were talking in the transportation bond bill about trying to secure revenue to do improvements to businesses along major thoroughfares in Lowell, such as Couple Square, Rogers Street, over on Bridge Street, is to try and see if we could get some money to invest in those businesses to to help their facades, or in this case, the interior of the building. I think I would look at funding mechanisms like that and try and tailor them to private buildings and make them eligible for that type of funding so we could work together to get those buildings up. I think an important thing is to have the school committee's administrative offices located in downtown Lowell. They were there before. I think that's a commitment that they should make to the downtown section of Lowell, and I think it's a great economic engine with the employees that would be brought to downtown Lowell.
No, I agree. It was disappointing when they had to move out of the downtown, and you're right, it helps everybody downtown. It's a nice professional place for the school department and looks good for the city. My third question would be, so as you know, being a resident in the city, an issue that's gonna come up this year is we'd like to hire 5 more policemen for public safety, and we also have the difficult choice of, we have the issue of trying to fund our schools at 100%. So what might your approach be if you become city manager to look at that? And obviously, public safety is important, but education, no doubt, is important to you too. So how do we try to balance that?
You're right, Councilor. Education is key. I think we have to resolve that net school spending issue. The good news is that the legislature's joint resolution calls for the school department to receive an additional $5 million in Chapter 70 money next year. So that's certainly going to help out the school department. Also, the joint resolution calls for the City of Lowell to receive an additional $600,000 more than last year in unrestricted government aid. So that's good news for the city. We have an additional $600,000. I'm also aware that the GIC increase is only going to be approximately 1%. So that's going to save us, I think, probably about $275,000. So that's good news. Although this budget is tight, the revenues are getting better for us each and every day that goes by. I mean, it's critically important to put those 5 police officers on the street. It's going to be done right now, thanks to a grant that the delegation got for police staffing. But that isn't the answer to it, because if that money dries up next year, you still need the 5 police officers. So we have to look at a long-term solution to public safety. We can't just say we can't afford it. We can afford it, somehow. So it's a combination of state funding, federal funding, and the city resources to make sure that public safety is a key.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is, if you were selected city manager, what would your first day, what would your first week on the job look like?
I would definitely visit every department and make myself familiar or refamiliarize myself with many of the employees, having worked here before. They are a wonderful group of people. And I just want to let them know that my office is always open for them to come. But just as important as meeting the individual employees, I would immediately sit down with the department heads. We have a lot of work to do on this budget, and we're going to make sure that when this budget is presented to you, you know about it in advance. You'll never be blindsided by this administration. You will have communication as to what the budget is that we're going to propose, so you have the time to review it, you have the time to consider it, you have the time to come up with questions about whether this is the right budget for this time. So that's going to be the most important thing, is meeting with the department heads if I am honored to be chosen as your city manager.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Martin?
Thank you and welcome, Representative Murphy, Kevin, sorry. I was pleased to hear, I guess, in your opening remarks, that you're committed to a strategic vision for the city, and actually working with the council on what that would be. Prior questioners have, I think, tipped my hand a little bit, because I kind of view your job as, the part with the base competencies, the running the day-to-day operation of a city, snow plowing, water, sewer, and the budget that supports all of that. But I think in recent years, and this goes back the prior administrations before that, is that to keep all that stuff working and without strangling yourself with perpetual tax increases, you need to grow. And that, I think, leads to the strategic part of the vision of growth. And you've talked a lot about that already. But that's of interest to me, not just so we can fund our operation, but so we can provide opportunity for our residents. I think the economy is still weak in a place like Lowell. You see inside the Route 128 belt that you've commented on already in Kendall Square, things are booming there. Well, it's not terrible here, but it's not booming here either. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but things like the Hamilton Canal District, the Thorndike Street project, Tanner Street. We had a nice presentation a few weeks ago about Pawtucket Boulevard, the former Maycom building there. All those things are in your strategic vision, if you would?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what's going to make the city better. That's what's going to spur business development is that vision. And I want to have a dialogue with this city council to find out from you what your vision of the city. I may have a vision, but you are my boss. And I want to make sure that the vision that is being presented is the vision of my bosses. And we're going to have those conversations, and we're going to come up with a plan and move it forward for our citizens.
Okay. And you've also talked about, the sort of delivery system, the state delegation, the money that comes back here from the state. Certainly we do very well in Chapter 70 aid. Local aid, general government aid is kind of flattened in recent years, but I still think we still do better than most other communities. In my view, I think, and then you mentioned all the special ways there are to get money, and I think, especially in those special ways, we've been successful, not because of the delegation's efforts, but also because we make good use of those funds. So now your role's going to change if you were to get this job, right? You're going to be the one having to make good use of that money. I think you've seen the good that comes of that, but so it's a kind of an easy question, but I'm sure you're prepared to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I'm ready. One thing that the state government has always said to our delegation is they love to give the city of Lowell money because they will give money to municipalities across the Commonwealth and it will sit in their coffers for years without being expended. But when you come to the city of Lowell and you give the city of Lowell money, we spend it. I'll never forget the grand opening we had at River Place, or the ground digging, is the bulldozer was running. It was ready to go, and it was very impressive to the state officials there. They said, boy, that bulldozer is ready to start digging. I said, yeah, just give us the check and we're ready to go. So we know what to do with state funds, and that's why we get them, because there's results. And that benefits not only the city of Lowell, it benefits the Commonwealth.
And I've heard that from other leaders in other municipalities that just can't seem to get out of their own way. There's infighting, there's bureaucracy, and they can't ever seem to have the success we've had. So I'm happy to hear that you're committed to keeping that moving. I'd like to talk a little bit about your experience on the higher ed, as the chair of higher ed, because I think that maybe speaks to your ability to manage some things. Is that a joint committee?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's a staff, I assume, sort of how big?
The staff was, I would say probably about 10 people. The staff, when you talk about not only my staff, but researchers and legislative aides, probably about 10 people.
So the committee manages the staff, which managed $1 billion, is that?
$1 billion. Actually, the fiscal year 14 higher education budget is $1.1 billion. I think I'm the type of person that believes that department heads should be responsible for the day-to-day management of the employees, that you delegate that responsibility. I meet with them. I make sure that they're doing their job properly. I think that my time as chairman of higher education, when I had to meet with all of the college presidents and chancellors, was like meeting with the department heads of higher education, to learn what their needs were, to learn what their achievements were, to learn about their future goals. So I think I have experience with meeting with people to formulate plans, and then to make sure that those people enforce those plans as they relayed them to me.
Okay. Can you point to other things in your background, sort of managerial ability? I mean, obviously I'm a lawyer like you. I run an office. I know what's involved in that. And I think there are some lawyers that make very good managers and others that don't. So how do we know that you're one that is? What can you tell us about that?
My secretary's been with me for almost 25 years. I think that's a pretty good indication of the type of manager I am, that I recognize the talent and I reward the talent appropriately, and I'm the type of person that looks to collaborate with my employees. I know I have a small law office, but it's still a concept that expenditures can never exceed revenue. And it's the same with the city, is expenditures can never exceed revenue. And if the revenue is coming down like we know it has in the past, then you've got to start trimming the expenses. So I think my private law practice, although it's not a large enterprise, I think the micro concept is similar to the macro city management.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Council Mercy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Representative Murphy, and thank you for participating in this process. My question would have been, would you still practice your law? And you said that you wouldn't, but I want to go a little bit further, and you do represent legal counsel to other communities like Draycott or whatever. Are you intending to continue that as well?
No, I will not.
Okay.
I will not practice law
Okay.
if I get the city manager's job.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted you to reiterate.
Well, that's a fair question.
In your cover letter, you stated that, and I quote, that Lowell is at a critical juncture. Much progress has been made over the past decade. However, there is still much work to be done. Like what, in your opinion?
I think public safety is a key issue. Even if statistics don't say there's a spike in crime, that's not the perception. I represent the Lower Highlands neighborhood, and my heart was broken when I went to a sidewalk meeting after the drive-by shootings. And a young mother told us that she couldn't move out of the city quick enough. This is a young family that had moved in and now was leaving. That was very troubling to me. I think we need to do more when it comes to public safety, because the perception is reality. And if the citizens don't feel safe in their homes and in their streets, we've got to do more. I think we have to do more for our downtown and our other neighborhood businesses. I think that we have to provide the services to them so they can thrive. Not only downtown, but the Rogers Street corridor, Bridge Street, Couple Square. All of the neighborhood businesses need our support, need our services. So we are in a good place. We're in a very good place, but we always can do better. And I think that would be one of my goals.
That's very good. What role would the neighborhoods play in your tenure?
The neighborhoods have always been an important part
The neighborhood groups, I
Yeah.
reiterate.
Yeah, I think if you talk to the Highland Circle Group, the Lower Highland Neighborhood Organization, the Acre Group, all of these neighborhood groups that I dealt with during my time as a state representative would tell you that myself and my staff were always intimately involved with those neighborhood groups. I'd go to their meetings, the sidewalk meetings that were held, listen to what their concerns are. And, the great thing about going to the neighborhood meetings is that you learn the pedestrian issues that are out there. We can talk about economic development and the emerging technologies and nanotechnology, But if somebody needs a sidewalk paved, or if there's a bump in the road that hasn't been fixed, that's important to quality of life issue. So the neighborhood groups are of critical importance to our city in informing us about those pedestrian issues that we need to address.
Thank you. What are you most proud of as a state legislator?
I'm most proud of the fact that I have a wonderful working relationship with my colleagues in the Lowell delegation. It can't be said of all the delegations across the Commonwealth. There are some delegations that don't even talk to each other, and that's why they get in their own way. But, you know, Tommy, David, Eileen, myself, fondly Steve, you know, we didn't agree on every issue. We've had spirited conversations about issues. But we understood when it came time to make a public vote or a public presentation, it was in the best interest of the city for all of us to be together. And I think the fact that I was a hothead like myself sometimes, rigid in what I thought was right, could come over and collaborate with their viewpoint. I think that's the best thing that's happened, working with our delegation.
And lastly, because most of my questions were answered, who is Kevin Murphy, and what is your greatest quality that you bring to the table?
I think my passion for this city. I have an incredible passion for Lowell. You know, I don't want to be the city manager or town manager somewhere in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I want to be the city manager of Lowell and nowhere else because of my passion. And I think that's the best thing I bring to the table.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Murphy. Good evening.
Sorry, Council.
Kevin, I just want to thank you for your interest in the position, and I also want to thank you for the passion that I did hear in your opening statement. I think well, I know it meant a lot to me, and I just want you to know that I think that's important in a person who has an interest in this position, because I think Lowell is at a crossroads. When you look at what's going on with our budget going forward, where we're talking about possibility of a 2.5% tax rate increase. It's something that we're going to all have to deal with going forward. But we do have opportunities here. Lowell is a wonderful city, and we do have opportunities. Let's talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, the downtown and what's going on, and the fact that we do have so many empty storefronts. And we do have, under the chairmanship of Councilor Belanger, the Economic Development Subcommittee now looking at downtown issues, and specifically parking in the downtown. And is your view that parking or the meters in the downtown are a revenue source for the city, or do you see it more of a management tool? Because I think that's a debate that's going on right now, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's more of a management tool to make sure that, you know, the cars aren't just parked there all day, is that residents have the opportunity to come down, find a spot, and do their business in downtown Lowell and leave. So I look at it as a management tool, especially for the cost of parking in downtown Lowell. You know, I get culture shock or sticker shock when I go to Boston compared to Lowell. So especially with the price, it's very reasonable. With that said, though, the fiscal year 15 budget is based upon a significant increase in parking revenue.
Right.
So I think that's an issue that has to be addressed when we talk about revenue and where we go forward with the parking.
Okay. Keeping in line with the budget discussion about net school spending and how we did miss it this past fiscal year, and we ended up taking, I think it was $2 million out of the Chapter 17 account, and we need to put that back in, as you know, next year. So how do you anticipate getting that money back into that account? And then, as a follow-up question, looking at the charter schools, and you know that we have two very good charter schools here, but unfortunately the state, I believe, we're down about 22% in charter school reimbursements. And I believe there's legislation now floating around Beacon Hill to try to get that back to a comfortable level of funding for municipalities. So how do you see approaching both the charter school money as well as the additional funds that would be needed?
No,
Chapter 17.
Clearly, the charter school reimbursement should be blamed upon the legislature. You know, we vowed to reimburse you 100% in the first year for your loss of charter school revenue. And we didn't fund the line item. That's unfair, it's unconscionable. It's something that's really come to the forefront just now. In the last supplemental budget we did have a proposal to increase that line item by $10 million. They reserved that for consideration in the annual state budget. You can rest assured I'll be working hard to make sure that the charter school reimbursement line item is fully funded. That will help us out tremendously, because there is a need for charter schools. And we can work together. But we can't work to the detriment of our public school system. We've got to make sure that that money stays with the public schools so they can educate the children properly. The net school spending is a very important issue. You know, we talked about the importance of education. We all believe in education. Not just higher education, though. K through 12 is a very important segment of our education process, because not every student is going to go on to college. And we have to make sure that that student is ready with the technological skills to get a job in this new business environment. So we have to invest in our school system. And I don't have a problem with saying we have to invest in our school system, because that's what's going to spur economic development. And it works hand in hand. And I vow that we will resolve that net school spending.
Are you prepared to recommend to this council that we continue to build our operating reserves, especially as it relates to the unfunded pension liability that we have going forward? I know right now, I believe that reserve is at about $7.8 million, and we really need to plan for the future. So would your administration be, again, depositing funds into that account?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you don't spend your reserves on the operations of your city. Reserves are intended for one-time expenses. If there's an unforeseen happening, or if there's a one-time capital improvement or purchase that needs to be done, that's what you use the reserves for. And that's what we'll concentrate on if I'm chosen to be city manager. With that said, we will look seriously at other funding mechanisms to fund the operating budget. You know, there's a lot of grant opportunities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we have some great grant writers here in the city of Lowell. And I think that we should really, really be aggressively pursuing these grants. We saw that with the police staffing grant, is that our delegation didn't really know about that police staffing grant. And thank God Tommy Golden was at a public service hearing, and a representative from the Executive Office of Public Safety came in and talked about the grant. And he came to the rest of us, and we aggressively pursued it and got over $500,000 for the city of Lowell. And that's going to help put those 5 police officers on the street. We've got to aggressively pursue those grants, and I'll do that, because I know where the vehicles are.
Right.
And I know that and I know my colleagues know where the vehicles are. So if we have the plans, we'll give it to them, and when the vehicle comes along, it will hop on.
Okay, thank you. My last question has to do with the GIC and how the city ended up transferring over about 2 years ago over to the GIC. And I believe with 1 year left, we need to do planning as to whether or not it's been beneficial. I read where I believe the town of Saugus just removed themselves after 3 years from the GIC. I guess what strategy would you put in place in order to make sure from a cost-benefit analysis that we're going to continue down that road, and especially making sure that our retirees are covered as well? So
I've always, I think the retirees coverage is critical. You know, they contributed for years and years, and we can't pull that rug out from under them. Obviously, the first thing I want to make sure is that people are happy with the GIC product. From everything I know, the GIC was at the Lowell Housing Authority for years, and the employees were very, very happy with the product. I want to make sure that the City of Lowell employees are happy with the product and what they receive from it. And if they're happy with the product, we will continue with GIC. We should be happy with the product this year because we get only a 1% increase, so that's pretty good.
Right.
So I will do a long-range planning for health insurance to make sure that it stays at that low level.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Representative Murphy. You just mentioned before, answering one of Councilor Molinazzo's questions quickly, what's your opinion of Lowell's K through 12 public education system? And as city manager, if you do become our manager, how will you work with our school administration to improve on our education system?
You know, it's my wife and I sent our son to the Bailey, the Daly, and Lowell High School. And we always said that if we had to do it all over again, we'd do it the same way. He received a world-class education in the Lowell Public Schools, so I'm a prime proponent of the Lowell Public Schools. But with that said, there have been some disturbing studies that I've read in recent weeks, and that is that the curriculum in K-12 right now isn't preparing our children for the economy that we're in right now. As I said earlier, some of these students aren't going to go on to college, but they need the skill set to get into these technological companies that are coming around. So I would work with the superintendent of schools and the school committee. And I'm no expert in education, but I think I'm becoming an expert in economic development and what we need to do. And I think improving the skill set of our K through 12 students is critical for that.
A simple question. What's Lowell's biggest challenge if you become city manager? Something that's specific to the city.
I think public safety is one of the biggest issues. You know, because public safety, education, and economic development are all intertwined. Is that, you know, companies are going to come to Lowell not only for the talented workforce, but if they feel safe here. And residents are going to stay in the city only if they feel safe here. So I really think, and I agree with you, the statistics may not show spikes in crime, but the perception in my district, when you go to the Acre, the Lower Highlands, and other areas of the Highlands, is there is a problem with public safety. And so we have to deal with that reality, and that's one of the first things that I would be dealing with as city manager.
And also, a few moments ago, you self-described yourself sometimes as a hothead. So if you do become a city manager, how would you handle a situation when you find yourself in a disagreement with one or more councilors?
You're my boss. I'm not going to get in an argument with you. I understand the Plan E form of government. I understand it's unique. I have 9 bosses, but I understand that. I think my role, though, as city manager is to research the issues, to come up with a plan, to discuss that plan with you, and to make recommendations relative to that plan. However, in the end, it's going to be the collective judgment of all of you that determines what type of plans we're going to pursue.
And also, you mentioned that you represent a district in Lowell where minorities are prevalent. As city manager, what's your plan to work with that community as far as welcoming them and working with them, our immigrants?
Well, I work with them right now. I have a wonderful relationship with the CMAA and other Southeast Asian groups. You know, I represent the second largest Southeast Asian population in the United States of America, right here in Lowell. The only Southeast Asian population larger is in Stockton, California. So I recognize the benefits that those immigrants bring to the city of Lowell. So I would continue to work with them. And I commend former city manager Bernie Lynch. I mean, he made sure that our workforce reflected the entire city and made sure that our boards and commissions reflect the entire city. So I want to make sure that I attract minorities to our boards and commissions when we do that outreach via the newspaper, website, and other areas, because they have their own newspaper that we could utilize to attract an immigrant population to our city.
And finally, your experience and your background is different than any other candidate that's applied for this position. What attribute through your experience or your professional background sets you apart from all other candidates for this position?
I really think I'm a good leader. A good leader is willing to listen to other people. And we may not agree at first on what the proper course of action is to take, but after discussing it, we can reach a common ground. That's a true sign of leadership, is to be able to reach common ground. And since you 9 councilors are my boss, I want to make sure I reach common ground with you. And I vow to you that I will never blindside you. You will know what's going on a weekly basis in the city of Lowell. You will know what the plans are for the city of Lowell. And you won't know them on the Tuesday night at the city council meeting. You'll know them well in advance so you can research those issues on your own, so that you can come up with the proper questions to ask about that plan, and you can come up with a reasoned vote on whether to adopt or reject that plan.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, all set.
Thank you, Council Rourke. Council Samaras?
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, Representative Murphy, and begin the questioning. Have some fun here. You talked about a dialogue with the city council to obtain our vision, okay? Do you intend to do that at our Tuesday meetings, or how else would you do that? I like the thought, but how would you do that? 9 of us.
I'm a great emailer now, and I think it's terrific. It's a great form of communication. So I would plan to utilize email, give a weekly report. Here's what's going on in the city. If email doesn't work for somebody, I'll do whatever medium you think is most advantageous to you. If it's a telephone call, if it's a personal meeting with me, that's all fine for me. My standard operating procedure as a state representative is I respond to a constituent as they respond to me. So if they call me, I call them back. If they write a letter, I write a return letter. If they email me, so on, so on. I will communicate with you in any medium that you feel is best for you.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, but you also, when you were talking about the dialogue, you also mentioned wanting to know our vision.
Yes.
So would the vision come through just email and through a Tuesday meeting, or can you think of any other creative way that would allow us to have some type of positive interaction with you as city manager, so we can be heard and we can share our ideas for the mutual growth of the city, mutual help making the city the better place?
My door will always be open for city councilors, will be my priority. Is if a city councilor wants to meet with me, they will meet with me immediately and share our thoughts. I mean, I think it's good to meet one-on-one because you can have an honest, open dialogue one-on-one and try and reach a chord on a particular issue. And I'd welcome meeting with each of you one-on-one. There's more than enough time I'll make available in the day to do that.
Thank you. The second question, if you're hired as city manager and you think that you've done a good job, what are some of the changes that we as councilors and citizens would see and realize several years down the road?
I think you'll see a safer city. I think you'll see a city that has a downtown that's vibrant. I think you'll see a city that has neighborhood businesses vibrant. I think you'll see parks that are spectacular. And I think you'll see an economy that is much better than it is right now, because I believe I have the leadership skills to bring those to fruition here in the city of Lowell. And whenever I'm no longer city manager, I'm still going to be living on Newbury Street in the Highlands. And I'm going to make sure that this city is a better place for me and all the residents.
That's the city we want. Okay, I asked all of the candidates pretty much to explain how they would work with a group of businessmen that we have in Lowell. It's called the Lowell Plan. It's a group of, I think you know, they're a group of bankers, the publisher of the paper, realtors, educational leaders, and it's one of the best examples, I think, of public-private partnership. But the thing is, over the years, sometimes they've had a good relationship with City Hall, sometimes it hasn't been the best of relationships with City Hall. But they are a dedicated group of people who want to help make this a better place. And they have helped in either surveys, the hiring of consultants, or supporting initiatives that different city managers have had for this city. How do you see, as a board member of that group, working with that group to make this a better place and help in our economic development? Because we have the uniqueness of already having a team in place.
Oh, no, I think the Lowell plan will be a critical partner in my administration. You know, the city doesn't engage in economic development. Business people engage in economic development. We as a city can promote their businesses, but ultimately it's the business that is going to spur economic development. And there are great business people on the Lowell plan. I deal with them as a state representative, as a practicing attorney. They are integral to the future success of our city. And the Lowell plan does great work. I mean, they're doing surveys of companies outside of Lowell as what their needs are and what type of expansion plans do they have. What a great opportunity to seize on those companies to say, expand here in Lowell. They have a wonderful concept about business zones. You could take a place like the Rogers Street corridor or Couple Square, and they almost form their own condominium. What they do is they have common charges, and they provide services for those businesses that the city can't provide for them. They provide marketing for those businesses, streetscaping, things like that. No, the Lowell plan will be a critical partner in my administration, and I welcome working with them. I think they do a wonderful job. Just look at them. They're the bankers. They're the business people. They're successes. Why wouldn't we work with them?
No, that's a good point. They have a value. All right, please, could you tell us one major victory that you had in your career that you're most proud of?
I think the Julian Steel reinvention plan was probably one of the biggest victories because that was not a favored proposal in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. And our House delegation convinced Speaker Finneran to remain neutral in that vote. And that meant that the three of us had to go out and drum up the support on our own to pass the Julian Steel proposal. And we had a lot of opposition to it. But myself and my colleagues, Tommy and David, were able to use our interpersonal skills, our collaborative skills, our reputations with the other members. And we were able to piece together a majority of the House members. We had people against us. We had the chairman of Ways and Means who got up and spoke against the proposal. And we were able to defeat the then sitting chairman of Ways and Means. So I think that was probably one of my best achievements, where I was able to use my reputation and my interpersonal skills to achieve a victory that wasn't that easy to achieve.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Representative Murphy, at this point, we welcome you to conclude with a closing statement.
Well, very briefly, as I said throughout this interview, I think I bring passion to this job. I love this city. It's the one I lived in, I grew up in, and I'm going to reside in the rest of my life. So I'm deeply committed to this city. I think I have a vision for the city. I think I know what matters to the other citizens of the city because we're neighbors. And like I said, what matters to you matters to me. I think I have the credentials. I think I bring a combination of education and practical career experience that will make me a leader, will make me the person who can lead this city council to make this city better. And finally, I have the collaborative skills. You hear that word a lot now, but it's an important word. The ability to collaborate with everyone in the city of Lowell to make this a better place. Like I say, if given the chance, not only will I be humbled and honored, but I promise I will make you proud. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. On behalf of the City Council, we thank you for your interest, your thoughtfulness, your time, and we will be in touch. Entertain a motion to adjourn. If there's no further business from the members of the council. Motion by Council Martin, seconded by Council Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Have a good night.